Kids get bored. It's just part of growing up. Or at least, that's what their parents would always say. Living in a small town in England, you run out of things to do by your 5th birthday. By your 10th, you want nothing more than to move out. By your 15th, half the kids end up in hospital doing something stupid. The kid entering the churchyard tonight is no exception. As he ducks under the gap in the chain-link fence, he catches the corner of his cast on the metal. The cast is already so covered in nicks and scratches that the new tear barely makes a difference. He has been trying to cut the cast off with kitchen scissors for the last 3 weeks. He'd broken his wrist riding his bike off the roof of his house. It would have worked if it wasn't for the post box being a little too close to the building. His brother calls out to him from up ahead. He's already at the door to the church. The kid hears his best friend shuffling around nervously behind him. He waits for her turn to duck under the fence and follow him into the churchyard, away from the road. Even in the middle of nowhere, in total darkness, the kid can tell she's scared to break the rules. The pair of them rush over to meet the kid's brother at the entrance to the church. The older brother grins at both of them. At 21 years old, he may as well be 41. Towering over the two of them, with a few scraggly chin hairs and a tattoo on his neck. They can't imagine what his life must be like. Going to university in London, driving a car, getting tattoos, drinking alcohol that costs more than 10 quid and doesn't come from the corner store. What a life. There isn't a door to kick open. The church building is in total disrepair. Only the limestone structure is left standing. The windows have all been smashed in long ago, and the pews rotted away, leaving only some moss creeping its tendrils into every nook and cranny. As the three of them make their way inside, they look up to see the starry night sky above their heads, no roof left intact. In fact, the only part of the building that seems to still be half standing is the tower at the far end. Even in the dark, they can still make out a tight spiral staircase hewn into the stone, disappearing up into the collapsing tower. The kid grins. What to explore first? They all split up, wandering around different parts of the church hall. The kid makes a beeline for a toppled-in patch of wall. He clambers up onto a window ledge and hoists himself up onto the wall, looking down at the other two. A stone gives way under his foot and almost sends him tumbling, but he throws out his broken wrist just in time to balance himself. Across the hall, his best friend is checking her flip phone anxiously. She'd said earlier in the evening that she needed to be back before 1 a.m. or her parents would be worried. It's already 12:45. The kid's older brother calls out across the church. "I need the toilet. I'm gonna climb straight to the top of the tower and do it off the edge. Watch out for rain." And with that, he disappears through the little doorway and up the spiral staircases. Very quickly, the sound of his footsteps disappears, leaving the kid and his friend alone together. The kid looks over his shoulder out of the church building. From up on this patch of wall, he is almost at the perfect height to pick an apple from the tree next to them, if he can just stretch out far enough. There, he plucks 2 apples, one for him and one for his friend. He tosses it to her, but she misses the catch. Looking up at him, he can tell she already wants to go home. He grumbles and jumps down from the wall. The landing jars his leg pretty badly, but he clenches his teeth hard enough that no noise escapes his mouth. He grins at his best friend. She doesn't return it. It's late. She needs to get home soon, and the only way they can get home is in his big brother's car. "Fine, I guess it's probably home time." She gives him her best attempt at a smile. The kid walks over to the stairs, sticks his head through the doorway, and calls out. No response. Great. How high do these stairs go? They can't be more than a couple of stories, surely. He calls again. Still nothing. His best friend appears at his shoulder. They both peer up the staircase. It's such a tight spiral that they can't really see anything beyond the first 10 steps. It's dark in there, almost too dark to see where they're going. He gets out his flashlight and flicks it on. That should be enough light for the both of them. The kid plants his foot on the first step and starts climbing. The steps feel well worn. They're smooth in the middle and dip down slightly from years of use. 1 step, 2 steps, 3, 4, 5. His flashlight dies. He shakes it, knocking the back of it a couple of times like they do in the movies. Nothing, not even a flicker. He asks his friend if she has a flashlight. She doesn't. So the two of them climb in the dark. Very quickly, the stairs change shape. Or maybe that's the wrong word. They aren't changing shape, they're just shrinking. It's subtle, but definitely happening. The gaps between them are getting smaller, and the undersides of the stairs above are bearing down on the kid's head slightly. The kid stops and turns to his best friend. He can hardly see her at all in the dark. She's just a slightly darker shadow standing a couple of steps down from him. He asks if the steps are getting smaller. She tells him not that she can tell. He insists they must be. The stairs above their heads are getting lower and lower. The space is closing in on them slightly. She says she has no idea what he's talking about. Tutting at her, he takes a couple more steps up the staircase. The cast on his arm tightens. That's strange. He keeps going, and all of a sudden, it feels like a vice. The blood flow is cut off almost instantaneously. His fingers feel cold and start to tingle, his forearm swelling and bulging around the edge of the cast. The pressure building up inside it is ridiculous, feels almost as if the cast splits apart and falls off. Blood rushes back to his fingertips. He flexes them gratefully, turning to his best friend. Even in the darkness, he can tell she's peering at him intently. He runs a hand over his arm, massaging it gently. That's strange. His arm feels different from how it did before it went into the cast. There's more hair on it now, and the muscle running along his forearm feels more pronounced. He flexes his wrist. No pain, no stiffness, nothing. He isn't due to get his cast off for another month at least. Those doctors clearly don't know what they're talking about. Are you standing on your tiptoes? His friend asks from behind him. He looks down at her shadow, confused, and tells her no, he isn't. The kid apparently looks taller. Must just be uneven stairs or a trick of the light. Come to think of it, though, his best friend does look a little different standing there below him, even just from her silhouette. She isn't any taller, but her figure looks different. Her voice sounds a little lower. His brother, that's who they're after. They'd get to the top of the stairs, find him, and see what was going on. Must just be some strange optical illusions happening here in the dark. The two of them press on, continuing up the stairs. Step after step they go. They must be up on the second floor by now, surely. But there's no light ahead of them indicating any kind of exit, just more stairs. The kid asks his friend what time it is. He hears her flipping open her phone and pressing a couple of buttons, but no light fills the space. She presses them again and again. Nothing. Her battery must have died. That's the only explanation. She tries to tell him that it was almost on full a minute ago, but he doesn't really listen, because at that moment, he sticks a hand in his pocket to take out the apple he'd plucked. Warm goop sticks to his fingers. His back pocket is full of sticky mush. Little creatures wriggle around inside it. Maggots. How had he plucked a rotten apple? It felt fine on the branch. He takes another step, hands still absently hovering over his pocket. A buzzing sound. A couple of flies brush past his fingers. What had they been doing in his pocket? He hears them drift around him and up the staircase, until suddenly, their buzzing stops. He crouches down and squints hard in the dark. He can just about make out two little flies lying on the stair just 2 steps away from him, both on their backs, legs curled. The kid reaches back into his pocket and feels around. The sticky mush is gone. Just some kind of dry, dusty substance is left. Strangely, the kid doesn't panic. He knows somewhere in his head that everything happening to him is very peculiar, yet he doesn't feel worried about it at all. To be honest, all he really cares about right now is making it to the top of this staircase. He takes off, running 2 steps at a time up towards where his brother must be waiting. Part of his mind notices that the jarring feeling in his leg from jumping off the wall is gone. No time to think about that now. Up he runs, each stride throwing him further and further. Somewhere behind him, he can hear his best friend muttering something to herself, something incoherent and garbled. Her voice definitely sounds different now. It barely sounds like her anymore. She sounds more like her mother. The kid catches his foot on a step and falls. His best friend clatters into the back of him before she has a chance to stop. The two of them topple over, landing awkwardly on a step, enough to knock the wind out of him. She lies on top of him. Only, it can't be her. It feels like a fully grown woman, not his 15-year-old friend. She whispers to him. Her voice doesn't sound scared at all, though. If anything, she seems a little disinterested. What's happening to us? The kid breathes heavily, struggling to get the air back into his lungs. That's when he notices the smell. Something deathly rotten is filling the staircase. Something moldy and decaying. She seems to notice it too. The pair of them stand up straight and peer up the stairs. In the gloom, they can see it clearly enough. A person slumped on the ground. The smell tells them all they need to know about this person. They should run, right now. They should run back down the staircase and out of there. Yet both of them inexplicably and in unison continue walking up the stairs, closing the gap on the corpse. It blocks off 2 whole steps, lying awkwardly on its side, slightly hunched over as if the person had collapsed in a coughing fit. The kid almost slips over. Something small is under his foot, something metallic. He reaches down and picks it up, feeling its shape and knowing almost immediately what it is. He lifts the lid and flicks the red and gold lighter on. A little flame fills the staircase with light, orange and weak, dancing around the stone. It is just enough to make out the flecks of blood coughed out of the corpse's mouth and onto the stone steps. It is just enough to see the scruffy little beard sprouting out of the corpse's face. It's just enough to make out the tattoo on the corpse's neck. The kid looks down at his older brother. Not just his older brother, but his older brother. Whereas before he had seemed like he was 41, he now looks like it. 41 and dead from something in his lungs. The kid turns to see his best friend. A woman in her mid-30s looks back at him. Her hair even has a couple of telltale grays. She should look afraid, but her expression is almost blank. But there's a little something there, just enough of an expression to tell him that she's seeing the same transformation on his face looking back at her. The kid reaches up to touch his cheek. A wiry beard meets his fingertips. They should run. They should run back down these stairs and get out of here, call an ambulance and go home. And yet, the kid flicks the lighter closed, turns around, and steps over his older brother's body. As he walks up the stairs in silence, he hears his best friend doing the same. After 5 more stairs, his knee starts to give out. Then his hip soon after that. It gets harder and harder to stand up straight, so he lets himself stoop slightly. His best friend's breathing grows softer and wispier behind him. Their pace slows down. Each step seems to take more out of him, feeling harder than the last. He needs a rest. That's all he needs. If he can just sit down for a second. His chest clamps in on itself like a vice. Blood hammers in his ears. Sweat floods across his brow in an instant, and the whole world seems to tilt around him. The kid collapses on the ground, feeling his brittle wrist snapping under him. Pain shoots through his body as his chest squeezes tighter and tighter. He rolls onto his back, gasping for air with frail lungs. The kid claws at his sunken ribcage, feeling loose, wrinkled skin under his fingertips. With a monumental effort, he flicks the lighter on to see an old woman peering at him through the dark. He can hardly recognize his best friend anymore, as she gently takes the lighter from his hand and steps over his convulsing body. He watches helplessly as she continues gingerly up the stairs in silence. She doesn't look back over her shoulder, disappearing around the corner, taking the light with her. Leaving the kid to die an old man in total darkness. With one final gasp of air before his heart gives out on him, he clings desperately to one hope. She's going to make it to the top of the stairs. She has to. It is fortunate in many ways that SCP-723 is in such a remote area. While the church has stood on that site for hundreds of years, for much of that time, it has been abandoned. Little is known about the history of the church, as many of the events around it have descended into local folklore. What is known about SCP-723 is that it is a spiral staircase housed within an abandoned church building in an undisclosed location in rural England. For all intents and purposes, it is an unremarkable set of stairs. Made from ordinary limestone from the local quarry, the steps are approximately 0.75 meters wide and worn away in the middle, apparently from frequent use. If you were to look at the outside of the church, you would see that the tower containing the staircase is not particularly tall and is in a state of disrepair. Taking a look inside that tower, however, seems to show the staircase extending up beyond the height of the tower, something that seems on the surface to be physically impossible. In fact, how high the staircase itself goes is a mystery to this day, as those studying SCP-723 are yet to find a way to see inside it beyond the first 2 floors. This is because every object, living or otherwise, that ascends up SCP-723 undergoes a rapid aging process. Organic creatures quickly grow older, die, and decompose on their way up the steps. Other objects behave as if a great deal of time has passed. Batteries and electronic devices go flat almost immediately. Decay is accelerated too, meaning wear and tear take place at an alarmingly fast rate. This renders any conventional methods of exploring SCP-723 obsolete. Sound and video recording equipment running on battery power quickly fail. After many attempts with different technology, recording devices linked to a robust cable were created specifically for trying to record footage beyond the first story of SCP-723. However, the video recordings failed around the 2nd story, and sound recordings failed around the 4th. Living subjects were required to transport these devices up the staircase, and so D-Class personnel were tasked with the job. Across all documented experiments, none of the subjects returned. In each case, a subtle change was noticed in the subjects upon crossing the 5th step. One subject paused, another gasped slightly, but beyond that, there was no physical or emotional discomfort for much of their ascent. Most were perfectly content to climb the stairs once they'd passed that 5th step. In fact, as the D-Class personnel climbed up the stairs and underwent the accelerated aging process, none of them appeared to be outwardly distressed for the most part. They all remained remarkably calm and almost disinterested in the way their bodies transformed before their very eyes. Video footage showed the subject's skin rapidly aging, undergoing conventional wrinkling and deterioration. Diseases appeared to develop at an advanced rate too, as one subject's body, recovered by pulling them back down with the rope they were attached to, contained tumors around the prostate and above the eye that were not present prior to the experiment. This subject was later discovered to have a family history of cancer. For all intents and purposes, it appears as if SCP-723 simply accelerates the natural aging process of the subject's body, following the same DNA instructions and deterioration that you would otherwise observe over the course of decades. D723-7 was the subject to make it furthest up the staircase before the connection was lost. Approaching the 4th floor, the signal grew very weak, but in the noise could be heard a handful of distressed murmurings, including possible references to a door or the door, and to dark and mark. Beyond this point, there is no usable evidence. Local folklore in the area indicates that SCP-723 has been producing the same effect for generations. Stories can be heard from local residents about old church congregations who used to meet in the building and would mysteriously lose grandparents, children, priests, and strays who would disappear up the staircase. It is theorized that this is why the church building was left abandoned for so long. SCP-723 was only identified relatively recently, in the early 2000s, after reports surfaced of local children going missing in its vicinity. In response, the area has been cordoned off and designated as Site 288. A 3-mile chain-link fence was erected around the churchyard with signage warning any visitors to steer well clear. A further 2-mile restriction zone with magnetic locks is scheduled to be constructed in the near future. 3 guards are stationed around SCP-723 at all times of the day. None of them openly carry any weapons, so as not to arouse much attention from any passersby, presenting the site as a mostly uninteresting, unsafe, derelict building. The guards are not permitted to approach or ascend the staircase, and the same goes for any SCP personnel. The only people permitted to enter SCP-723 are D-Class personnel, specifically approved by Foundation personnel with Level 4 clearance or higher. While little is known about the cause of the effect or how SCP-723 physically works, one thing is certain. No person who has started to walk up those stairs has ever come back down again.
The sounds of rocking metal make the recruit shudder. He knows the others were riling him up earlier, but he can't stop thinking about their story. It's all just a hazing ritual, he tells himself. Something they do to spook new members of the crew. Just a stupid ghost story. There was no such thing as the stowaway. His flashlight beam sweeps over the numbers on the sides of each shipping container, then illuminates the clipboard and paperwork in his hands. He finds himself recalling the details as he inspects the cargo deck, one item at a time. Supposedly, there's a crate hidden away on the ship that doesn't show up on any manifest. But nobody ever reports it, never has it moved off the boat, because there's something living inside it. The crewmen claimed that sometimes they'd hear scampering in the night, the sounds of something much bigger than a rat lurking deep in the bowels of the ship. People had opened up this mystery crate over the years, used it for storage, only to find its contents ruined come the time they docked at their destination. Food would always be eaten or rotten. Anything else corroded and rusted beyond use. All the stowaway's doing. The recruit reaches the far end of the cargo hold, his light crossing a number he doesn't recognize. He flips through the pages of the manifest, checking each container's number. No match. He looks again, checks again. Same thing. This crate shouldn't be on the ship, just like the one in the story. Reaching for his walkie, he radios to the captain, letting him know there's an unaccounted item on board. No answer from the other end. It's too late at night. Or maybe it's a prank. Has to be, the recruit tells himself. Part of a big joke where he's the punchline. No response via radio because the crew are hiding inside the container, waiting to jump out and startle him. It's all been an elaborate setup. The recruit has half a mind to leave them in there, head back to his bunk, and let them feel embarrassed that they waited all night to jump him. But if he doesn't open up the container, it's a bad look on his ability to do his job thoroughly. So, with a deep breath to steady his resolve, he reaches for the doors, throwing them open to see it's empty. That can't be right. He raises his flashlight, the beam passing over something hunched over in the corner. It twitches in reaction to the light, drawing the recruit's attention. Its spindly, emaciated limbs are holding something wet and bloody up to its face, as unsettling slurping and crunching noises echo through the container. Noticing the torchlight, it turns to face the recruit, sunken eyes almost pulled right into the sockets of its skull. Matted, disheveled hair is everywhere. Unkempt, soiled, tattered remains of clothes do little to hide the starved, withered frame of the person wearing them. And in its gnarled fingers is a dead rat, half-eaten. The stowaway, through rotten and missing teeth, bellows at the intruder, and a flashlight is dropped to the floor. Standing just under 40 feet long, a little over 8 feet wide, and 9.5 feet tall, the container was recovered from the cargo ship AKD Nonolith after it moored at Redacted Shipyard. At first glance, it appears to be nothing more than an ordinary red shipping container, showing only slight weathering and bearing markings consistent with the shipyard's numbering system. However, upon recovery, the SCP Foundation conducted a deeper analysis, and what they found was anything but ordinary. While it is made from non-anomalous terrestrial metals, the way these materials are combined and structured does not match any known industrial standard for shipping container construction. When viewed from the outside, the container appears to be normal, but once opened. Given its supposed connection with a spate of disappearances, the researchers were apprehensive about opening the container up. A long, drawn-out debate over who should be held responsible should some anomalous entity be freed from within the object ensued, significantly slowing down the examination process. After the research team refused to draw straws on the matter, a member of D-Class was used instead. Foundation personnel observed them opening the object from behind the safety of blast-proof observation glass. Fortunately for D-7466, the D-Class personnel assigned to the task, opening the container revealed what appeared to be a completely ordinary interior, just as one would expect from a standard, non-anomalous shipping container. However, upon stepping inside, D-7466 immediately noted two unsettling details. First, the temperature inside was unexpectedly warm, resting at a level that felt strangely suited for human habitation, despite there being no visible insulation, vents, or heat sources. Second, the light levels were noticeably brighter than expected, yet no bulbs, fixtures, or apparent sources of illumination could be found anywhere within. However, as these initial observations were being made, the doors to the container accidentally swung shut while D-7466 was still inside. Initially, there was uncertainty as to what to do, with some researchers initially fearing that the object was actually a sentient, carnivorous being that merely disguised itself as a shipping container. After 5 minutes had elapsed with no further incident, the research team elected to retrieve D-7466 from the container. Opening it up again, they found the D-Class alive, but in a state of confusion and outrage at having been trapped inside for so long, accusing the Foundation of using enhanced interrogation techniques on them. When questioned about this, D-7466 clarified that, from their perspective, they had been locked in the shipping container for approximately 2 hours. A full check of the testing chamber revealed that only 5 minutes had passed since the doors had closed. There was nothing to indicate that Foundation personnel were under the influence of any kind of anomalous effect altering their perception of time. All clocks, watches, and other timepieces, both digital and analog, were confirmed to be in working order. It was only D-7466 who had experienced a different passage of time. The Foundation immediately amassed a group of anomalous experts on the phenomena of time dilation to consult the research team on their ongoing investigation. Thanks to D-7466's first-hand account and continued experimentation, researchers confirmed that the anomaly was not a hallucination, psychological manipulation, or sensory distortion. Instead, the very fabric of time had been altered within the container. The flow of time had literally been altered from the moment the doors had closed. When this occurs, the interior space of the container is subject to a different temporal speed from the passage of time occurring in the world outside. This difference has been noted as being almost entirely randomized with no consistency. Within the container, time can either speed up, slow down, and even reverse in some cases. However, it has proven impossible to predict exactly how the temporal flow will be affected each time. Seeking to further test the anomaly's effects, the Foundation continued to deploy D7466 as a test subject. In a subsequent experiment, they were given multiple timepieces and equipment to record the flow of time, including a stopwatch and several backup stopwatches, to determine whether these devices were also affected by the anomalous temporal dilation or if they could be used to measure the anomaly's effects. The door was shut again, however, this time for an entire hour. When it was opened again, D7466 was surprised to be released from the container so soon, as from their perspective, only a minute and a half had passed. They reported that the stopwatches appeared to have functioned normally while within the container. Upon opening, though, the timepieces broke, erupting into a shower of broken gears and springs and ceasing to function. Attempts were made to use digital and electronic methods of measuring the time flow within the container. However, the same catastrophic failure appeared to affect all known timekeeping devices. All data would be instantaneously erased at the point of the door's opening, including anything recorded while the container remained sealed. The Foundation was unable to find any medium that could reliably record the passage of time while the doors were closed, forced to rely on pen and paper and the observations of the human subject placed inside. In a subsequent test, D7466 was once again placed inside the container. The doors were sealed for another hour, and once that time had elapsed, they were opened again. Only this time, they weren't quite the same when the research team found them inside. Unlocking the doors to the shipping container, the researchers saw no sign of D7466. Initially, the assumption was made that they had simply vanished, or that the time dilation of the anomaly had caused them to be displaced somehow. But as a brief search confirmed, D7466 was still inside. What was left of them, at least. The D-Class's body was discovered in a seated position against the rear wall of the container. They had been mummified. Carbon dating tests carried out on the remains of D7466 dated the body as being approximately several thousand years old. Anomalous archaeology experts noted that the remains had sustained severe damage, especially around the hands, where the bones had suffered a number of lacerations and fractures. D7466 had been banging their hands against the doors and walls of the container until their bones snapped. A similar break was discovered in the subject's right leg. Traces of organic compounds were discovered on the doors of the shipping container too, which were subsequently identified by the SCP Foundation Biochemistry Department. When they realized what it was, information about the compound was redacted from the records, for the sake of decency. Attempting to determine whether there was a correlation between the amount of time passing outside the container and inside it, the Foundation requisitioned another member of D-Class to act as a test subject. D9558 was placed inside the shipping container and, crucially, not informed of its anomalous effects prior to testing. The doors were closed for an hour, and while researchers expected to find them in a similar state to the remains of D7466, a thorough search of the container revealed that D9558 had seemingly disappeared. It was an effect of the time dilation that hadn't yet been witnessed and left the research team baffled. There was no way of determining where the D-Class test subject had gone, or whether they were even alive. Testing was suspended, only to recommence almost 3 days later. Upon opening the container, researchers were startled to find D9558 standing inside, having suffered no ill effects of time dilation, despite having been inside the anomalous object for 66 consecutive hours. When questioned as to how much time had passed, they were adamant that the research team had never even closed the door. The temporal dilation consultant group suggested the theory that D9558 had appeared to vanish because the anomalous effects of the container had accelerated time forwards to the moment that the doors were reopened. This caused D9558 to experience the beginning and end of the test as one continuous moment. A proposal for a practical application of the shipping container as a time machine was filed later the same day. It was rejected by the Ethics Committee and the O5 Council, as testing still hadn't uncovered a way to determine how much time was passing inside the object while the doors were closed. If the research team could figure out a way to calculate the temporal flow within the container, then it could prove to be a useful asset for the Foundation. A long-term expedition inside the object was planned, proposed, and then approved. Given that they were still none the wiser as to how the anomaly worked, D9558 was used for further testing, alongside 2 additional subjects, D8627 and D4513. The three of them were interred inside the shipping container for an hour and provided with a supply of notebooks and pens, along with enough rations to last the duration of 5 years. All three were instructed to record their experiences while inside, though once again were not told the nature of the anomaly. This was deemed necessary by the research team in order to prevent any of them objecting from being confined to what was essentially a small room for, what would seem like to them, an extended period of time. Reopening the container an hour later, the research team found D9558, D8627, and D4513 dead. All three had expired, though it seemed not from succumbing to the extended time they had spent inside the container, as had happened to the mummified D7466, who had likely died as a result of starvation. Examining their remains, a Foundation autopsy confirmed that two of the subjects, D9558 and D4513, had both suffered severe blunt force trauma, likely sustained during hand-to-hand beatings. These injuries were believed to be the cause of death in both instances. However, it appeared that posthumously, both of these D-Class personnel had been disemboweled, as well as subjected to other mutilation after they were killed, the details of which are redacted from the Foundation database. The third member of the expedition, D8627, had suffered a similar disembowelment, though the key difference being that theirs appeared to have been self-inflicted. The notebooks that the test subjects had been provided with were found to contain logs that spanned anywhere between a single year to a maximum of 9. Though the exact number is redacted, what is known is the three subjects' experience of the time dilation did not exceed enough years to reach double digits. After this point, the details recorded in the notebooks degrade into incoherent and mostly unintelligible ramblings. Similar writings were also found on the interior walls of the shipping container, written in blood and waste matter from all three of the D-Class subjects. Fingerprint analysis by Foundation forensic teams has confirmed that D8627 was the sole writer, and these rantings were seemingly left on the walls using blood and fecal matter they gathered from the other two subjects after their deaths. All attempts to decipher the writings left behind have failed to reveal any useful insights into the experiences of the three test subjects. The only conclusion Foundation researchers have been able to reach is that, after enduring what felt like several years inside the container, D8627 succumbed to extreme psychosis and paranoia, fixating on their fellow D-Class personnel. The exact breaking point remains unknown, but evidence strongly suggests that D8627 was responsible for the deaths of D9558 and D4513. Whether the murders were premeditated, the result of escalating tensions, or influenced by the anomaly itself is still unclear. With no external means of tracking time inside the container, the full extent of D8627's mental deterioration and what truly happened in those missing years remains a mystery. The anomalous shipping container was later moved to a Class 4 containment vault. When Foundation cleaning crews arrived to hose down the interior, they discovered the writings left behind on the walls had seemingly vanished. It seemed that, as a side effect of the time-altering properties of the container, any damage inflicted on it was undone after a random amount of time had passed. At present, the object, now designated as SCP-728, shows no further activity, nor any further anomalous properties that would warrant any more severe containment measures. In accordance with the SCP Foundation's standard security procedures, unauthorized access is strictly prohibited, though nobody is exactly clamoring to spend any time in the Forever Room. The applicant nervously adjusts his tie. Again. He's a fresh law school graduate who knows just how hard it is to get your foot in the door in the cutthroat legal world. Hundreds of people applied online for this position at the prestigious firm of Gilbert and Evans, but only 20 or so were considered good enough to be offered an in-person interview, and only one of them will get the job. The applicant has been here since 10 a.m., and after 2 long, anxiety-filled hours, only 2 more people are left. The applicant is trying to stay calm. He wants the interviewer to think he's confident, but he can't help but feel nervous. His foot taps as he checks the time. Every second feels like an hour. Maybe he should have brought a book. It would have kept him distracted and made him look smart in front of his prospective employer. But instead of reading, all the applicant can do is examine the office carpet. The carpet is bright red, decorated with lines that make blocky, overlapping shapes. The applicant wonders if it's meant to look like terracotta paving or something. It doesn't really match with the aesthetic of the building, Ponderosa Plaza. The offices of Gilbert and Evans are new, so new that the applicant can detect the lingering smell of the recently applied paint. He thinks he might have heard the secretary mention that the carpet got replaced recently. Aside from the secretary, the only other person in the room is the other candidate. She's been reading a book while she calmly waits to be called in. Of course she brought a book. The applicant is jealous of her calm appearance. His only solace comes in remembering that she's probably nervous too, but is just better than him at hiding it. After what feels like an eternity, the interviewer opens the door. The interviewer calls the woman's name, and she stands up, tucking her book under her arm. The applicant wishes her good luck, and she nods before going into the other room. Minutes pass. The applicant tries to soothe his nerves by tracing the patterns in the carpet with his eyes, but it's no use. His mouth feels extremely dry. He can feel his tongue sticking to the backs of his teeth and weighing down his lower jaw. He gulps, trying desperately to ease the dry sensation. The secretary had asked him if he wanted some water earlier, but he declined, like a fool. This might be the last chance he gets before he goes into the interview. Hesitantly, he waves to get the secretary's attention. Then, in a hoarse voice, he asks for a cup of water. As the secretary goes to get the water, the applicant glances back down. He could swear the pattern on the carpet had moved, but that couldn't be possible, could it? He needs to focus. He tries to cross his legs, but can't. Something seems to be holding his leg down. Before he can even register what's happening to him, the applicant starts to feel woozy. Something is very wrong here, but the applicant can't do anything about it. He feels weak and cold. Darkness starts to creep into his vision, and then everything around goes black. Meanwhile, the interview is going smoothly. The woman being interviewed is calm, put together, and seems qualified for the position. The interviewer has gone through enough people today to have a pretty good idea of who's going to be invited back, but there's still one more person to speak to. Right now, as he absently shakes hands with the woman and wishes her the best, really he's thinking about what he'll order for lunch. Salad? Maybe a burrito? Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream rings out from the waiting room. The woman and the interviewer both rush to the door and throw it open. They see the secretary, her face ashen, her outstretched hand pointing at the last applicant of the day, slumped over in his chair, dead. The offices of Gilbert and Evans soon go into lockdown. It doesn't take long for the paramedics to realize that something isn't right about the applicant's body. The interviewer and the secretary both assumed that he died of a sudden stress-induced heart attack. Obviously, it's a tragedy in someone so young, of course, but not completely unheard of in the legal field. However, the body doesn't show any signs of having suffered cardiac arrest. There's also the fact that the applicant didn't make a noise before he passed away, not even a gasp. In fact, it seems he went very peacefully, all things considered. But the strangest thing about the applicant's corpse is that there's not a drop of blood in his body. Not only that, but there's no blood at the scene. There are no obvious puncture wounds, but how else could a man have been drained of blood so quickly? With no other possible explanation, the death of the applicant is treated as a murder, and the city's top homicide detective is called in. The detective questions the woman, the secretary, and the interviewer, and they all tell the same story. The applicant seemed nervous, which was to be expected. He asked for water, and then while the secretary was out of the room, he dropped dead. The detective conducts a thorough examination of the room. Nothing out of the ordinary, not even stains in the carpet. Well, apart from the wet spot where the secretary dropped the cup of water in shock. The detective's best theory is that someone must have used a pump or some kind of machine to drain the applicant's blood. But the logistics of something like that happening seem unlikely. The secretary didn't see anything. There are no visible signs of a large machine even having been in the room. There's no depression marks in the carpet. No one heard the telltale sounds of machinery. As the detective examines the room further, the witnesses are escorted away, and the other officers turn their focus to checking the hallways. The building's doorman is questioned about any suspicious characters who might have come into the building that morning. Perhaps one of the other interviewees was trying to boost their chances of getting hired by eliminating the competition. After a thorough examination, the detective heads back to the station and starts to complete the paperwork for the case. It's far from the worst death the detectives ever investigated, but something about it sticks with him for the rest of the day. As he scribbles his notes, thoughts bounce around inside his head. The applicant's death is worse than gruesome. It's confusing. Why would the killer have picked him as a victim? Why, if the killer was a fellow applicant motivated by jealousy, would they have only stopped at one victim? The case is so puzzling, the detective almost forgets to take his shoes off before getting into bed that night, something he regularly does when he's consumed by a case. He counts himself lucky to live alone. He slips off his shoes, places them next to the bed, and drifts off to sleep. The following morning, the detective wakes up. He checks his phone to see if the crime lab had any revelations during the night that could potentially crack this case. Nothing. Disheartened, he starts his day. He swings his legs out of bed, but something is wrong. As soon as he puts his feet down on the carpet, he feels a heavy weight pulling down on them, as though something is grabbing onto them. The detective looks down. Something wide and flat has engulfed his foot entirely, something that's the same color as his bedroom carpet. The detective tries to scream, but the more of his body that's engulfed by the carpet, the more he's overcome by a wave of exhaustion. He feels cold and numb, two things that he knows are symptoms of rapid blood loss. At that moment, he understands what happened to the job applicant. By the time anyone questions his absence from work, the detective will be long dead, a victim of the same mysterious blood loss that he'd been brought in to investigate. Naturally, when a detective investigating a mysterious death falls victim to that same mysterious death on the very next day, the SCP Foundation takes notice. The Foundation was quick to lock down the Ponderosa Plaza building and the detective's home, and deliver amnestics to everyone present. As far as the witnesses know, nobody but police or paramedics ever arrived on the scene, and both the applicant and the detective died of unfortunately timed heart attacks. The carpets in both locations were eventually removed and replaced at a discounted rate by a trusted local business called Superior Carpet Professionals. This was done to hopefully prevent any further deaths caused by SCP-522, the blood-sucking carpet. SCP-522 looks at first glance like an ordinary swatch of red, geometrically patterned carpet. When being observed by more than one person, it's completely inert. But if a victim is left alone in a room with it, it will rip itself from the floor, wrap around whatever body parts it can reach, and insert thousands of microscopic filaments into the victim's skin. SCP-522 can suck every drop of blood out of a living creature in a matter of minutes. Once the victim is completely exsanguinated, the creature lets its prey go and returns to its spot on the floor as if nothing happened. When another person enters the room, they find a blanched corpse that appears to have just dropped dead while nobody was looking. While the sample in Foundation containment is bright red, this color in fact has nothing to do with the creature's gruesome diet, and instances of SCP-522 can appear in any color of carpet. Further investigation into the creature's structure has uncovered that this is because the carpet itself isn't alive. It's merely become infested with a mysterious and aggressive form of unknown slime mold that thrives in carpet fibers. For this reason, anyone working with SCP-522 is required to wear a full hazmat suit and go through standard decontamination procedures after leaving the containment cell. As we learned from the case of the unfortunate detective, it's all too possible to create new instances of SCP-522 simply by standing in a previous instance and tracking it onto the carpet in another location. This is backed up by anecdotal evidence suggesting that instances of SCP-522 have never been recorded attacking victims who live in shoes-off households. SCP-522 is fed a live pig or animal of equivalent size once a week. This schedule is somewhat arbitrary, as it's unclear how long the organism can actually survive between feedings. Like many ambush predators, it can be very patient when it wants to be. Outside of testing conditions, absolutely no personnel are permitted to enter SCP-522's enclosure without supervision. The carpet mostly behaves like an animal, but seems to have a limited intelligence or at least a higher awareness of its surroundings. Through animal and human testing, the Foundation has been able to determine that the carpet can tell the difference between a sentient person and an animal. If a D-class is made to stand in the center of SCP-522 while another observes from the other side of the room, SCP-522 will remain inert. The same happens if a rat is placed on SCP-522 while a D-class observes. But when two rats are placed in the same positions, SCP-522 will simply attack and exsanguinate one despite the presence of the other. Tests involving a D-class standing on top of the carpet while a rat observes yielded the same results. So, SCP-522 only acts when it isn't being observed by human eyes specifically. It is yet to be determined if SCP-522 knows a human witness would be able to raise an alarm and warn away future victims. Despite seeming to be aware of the difference between humans and animals, however, it doesn't seem to be able to account for the cameras that are constantly filming within its enclosure. When presented with an opportunity to hunt, seemingly nothing can stop SCP-522 from engulfing its prey. In one test, Foundation personnel stapled the carpet to the floor to see if this would impede it. A D-class was made to stand in the center of the carpet. SCP-522 showed considerable strength when ripping the staples out of the floor and quickly engulfed and exsanguinated the D-class. Another test was done with a heavy desk partially placed on top of SCP-522 while a D-class was also standing on it. SCP-522 was actually able to wriggle itself out from under the desk, exsanguinate the D-class, then slip itself back under the desk. Given how easily the SCP-522 organism can spread, and how stealthy and persistent a hunter it continually proves itself to be, the Foundation has naturally considered if it may have some potential real-world applications. If the right controls were put in place, for example, it could serve as the perfect tool for covert political assassinations. Attempts are underway to breed and cultivate more of this organism in the lab, pending approval. For now, thanks to the Foundation's efforts, the only known surviving instance of SCP-522 exists in containment. But given that it can spread to any carpet, it is recommended that all of our followers give their carpets a thorough clean. Maybe start leaving your shoes at the door when you come home, just to be safe. And if you're looking to renovate or move into a new home anytime soon, you should probably consider sticking to hardwood floors.
It's still there, lurking in the corner of his eye. The driver can't bear to look at it. His hands tighten on the steering wheel. His breath quickens, but he doesn't dare glance back. He tries to avoid the sight, averting his gaze from the rearview mirror. Every flicker of movement at the edge of his vision sets his pulse racing. It's been the same all week. No escape, no reprieve, no moment of peace from the specter that seems to be following him everywhere he goes. He can't even tell anyone about it. They'd think he was crazy. He's starting to think they might be right. All he can do is tell himself it's just the guilt, the weight of what happened pressing down on him. He's still in shock from the accident that happened the week before. He's convinced it'll go away with time. Won't it? Yet every time he looks, the driver sees it. The sign lingers, hovering like a shadow that won't let him go. At first, it was subtle. Just a glimpse in the wing mirror when he pulled over outside work or stopped at traffic lights. He thought nothing of it at first. Just a stop sign, one of thousands, unremarkable and easy to ignore. Until he began to see it everywhere. Always behind him, flickering into existence where it hadn't been just moments before. What seemed like tricks of the mind start becoming a looming, uncomfortable image. It couldn't be someone messing with him, right? No one had been there that night. He was certain of that. No one had seen him. He hadn't meant to. He was just so tired. Working late, his eyelids had drooped for what felt like only a second, maybe two. Trembling as he closes in on the intersection, the driver takes a fearful glance at his rear view, expecting to see the sign closer than ever. But it's not behind him anymore. It's in front. He slams on the brakes, foot crashing down with the force of a cinder block. The tires shriek against the pavement, and the car jolts to a violent, gut-wrenching halt. The foreboding sign looms ahead, its four-letter command offering a painful reminder of what he should have done on that night. The driver swears he can almost see a figure standing next to it and squints to look closer. Is that... It can't be. It's either his mind playing tricks on him, or it's a vengeful spirit. Either way, it's drawn his focus for a second too long. The horn of the oncoming truck is deafening, but the driver hears it too late. Too late to react. Too late to stop what's coming. The impact shatters his car's windows, sending a shower of glass through the vehicle. In seconds, the car has been flipped. Pain shoots through every part of the driver's body as he dangles upside down in the wreckage, still buckled into the front seat. His vision blurs, and the darkness starts to claim him for the final time. Through the shattered windshield, he stares at the spot where he swore he saw it, the sign telling him to stop. He doesn't stay alive long enough to realize there's never been a stop sign at this intersection.
Sometime in late 2019, Wilma Greggs vanished from work, right in the middle of an ordinary day. Her sudden disappearance left more questions than answers. As her manager, Lisa, scrambled to track her down, she began piecing together fragments of Wilma's recent behavior. Odd changes, subtle but unsettling. The moment she realized Wilma was missing, she attempted to get in contact with her via text message. She empathized with the recent difficulties that the woman had been experiencing, but reminded her that she couldn't just abandon work on a whim. Wilma responded, telling her boss she'd forgotten to call and that, as soon as she got home, she had passed out owing to exhaustion. This was the initial indicator for Lisa that something wasn't right. Wilma's car was parked outside the office. When informed of this, Wilma responded saying that she had walked home. Her house was situated 12 miles from her workplace, a 5-hour walk, and Wilma had walked the entire way. Naturally concerned, Lisa questioned her over this. If her car wasn't working, Wilma could have asked one of her colleagues to drive her or taken public transport. But Wilma explained that her car was working fine. It wasn't that the vehicle had broken down, it was that she couldn't drive it. Because there was a stop sign in her car. Wilma was compelled to do what it told her, so she obeyed. She stopped using her car entirely. Growing increasingly concerned, Lisa offered to come and take Wilma out for the evening. She offered to cover the cost of whichever restaurant they went to. They could even walk in the park if it would be of help. Wilma refused, and at Lisa's insistence, she told her boss she couldn't leave the house. There was a stop sign outside her window. She couldn't go outside. Out of worry for her friend and co-worker's mental state, Lisa attempted to call Wilma to talk to her directly. The call was immediately rejected. Wilma went on to explain that she couldn't make phone calls either. Lisa tried to get her friend to open up to her, aware that she'd been overworking herself, possibly to cope with, or to avoid coping with, what she was going through. But Wilma responded saying that she still couldn't answer the phone. A stop sign had told her not to. Earlier that day, while still at the office, Wilma had exited her cubicle to get a cup of coffee. Hearing the phone ring, she quickly returned, expecting to answer the call to a customer as normal. But when she came back, there was a stop sign by her desk. Seeing the sign had forced her to leave work, and having seen the same stop sign so many times throughout the day, Wilma had become convinced it was haunting her. By this point, Lisa had realized that Wilma could have been on the cusp of a serious mental breakdown, possibly owing to the stress and grief she was going through. Instead of making an issue out of her leaving work, Lisa was determined to help. She filled out a 30-day leave of absence form for her coworker. All she needed was Wilma's signature. Maybe some time away from work to process everything would make a difference to Wilma, and her erratic behavior would stop. Wilma only agreed to sign the slip if Lisa came to her, which her boss was happy to do, until Wilma urged her not to visit. She'd changed on a dime. The stop sign was at her front door now. No visitors. Thomas would agree with her. She had to follow traffic laws. At the mention of Thomas, Lisa asked Wilma if she had told William yet. She said that she would, after William's birthday. A short while later, Craig Dillard, an employee of Tillman Funeral Home and Crematory, handed over his letter of resignation to his boss. In his letter, Dillard explained that he was, and always had been, a devout and pious follower of the Christian faith. He believed that over the course of his career at Tillman Funeral Home, he was doing a good job. He'd taken pride in handling the bodies of the deceased with care and took preparing them for burial seriously. Dillard had always believed that taking on a job like this one was good for his soul. Craig Dillard had believed that by helping men and women say their final goodbyes to their loved ones, guiding them from the world of the living to the gates of heaven, he would be seen as virtuous in the eyes of God. But suddenly, he no longer believed. He thought he'd received a sign from the Lord to give up what he'd dedicated decades of his life to. While preparing the body of a recently deceased crossing guard for burial, Dillard turned around and froze. A sign loomed over him, stark and foreboding, as he checked the body for signs of decomposition. In his letter, Dillard reflected that in life, the man had directed traffic on the roads, and in death, he had guided the course of Dillard's own life choices. He declared that if God had given him a sign to leave his occupation for good, he had to listen. A sign telling him to stop. On October 4th, 2019, a writing assignment was handed in by a student at Wellington Elementary School. The students had all been instructed to write a short piece introducing themselves and describing something of interest that they had seen. One of the students, 6-year-old William Greggs, turned in his assignment to his teacher, Mrs. Pollock. In it, William talked about his parents, his mother Wilma, and his father, Thomas. When describing the cool thing he'd seen for the assignment, William recounted finding a stop sign in a room at his family home. It had seemed, to the child, that the sign was looking directly at him. Every time William entered a room at school, the stop sign would be there, waiting for him. He couldn't explain how, but he started to believe it was moving freely whenever he wasn't looking directly at it. In his assignment, William described the object as a kind of guardian angel, one that seemed to exist solely to protect him from danger. Though he wrote in his assignment that it didn't stop bad guys being bad, he also mentioned wishing that the stop sign had wings so that it could make cars stop. William talked more about his dad, Thomas, who had worked as a crossing guard. The sign that Thomas used didn't have wings, but it did tell cars when to go and when to stop. Thomas also had a really loud whistle. William remarked that he thought his dad looked cool and recalled a time when Wilma had driven them past Thomas's post. His dad had spotted them and waved, his smile beaming through the busy intersection. William loved his dad. William mentioned that he hadn't seen his dad in a while and wondered where he might be. It just so happened that the day William wrote the assignment was his birthday, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the stop signs appearing in rooms around the school were his dad's doing. He imagined it was all part of a playful joke, a way for his dad to make him laugh even when he wasn't around. But it wasn't just at school. William wrote that he'd even seen the stop sign in his bedroom at night. He ended the assignment saying that when he next saw his dad, he planned to give him the biggest hug. On September 30th, 2019, a clerk at South Palm Beach County Courthouse, one Frank Smith, was pulling out of his driveway ready to depart for work. As he reversed, his rear bumper hit something, denting it. He'd checked his rearview mirrors and was sure there hadn't been anything behind the car. Looking again, Frank could see nothing. Whatever it was had vanished. Later, several of Frank Smith's neighbors made non-emergency calls to local police after witnessing him sprinting out of his home, screaming into the night. Over the phone, one neighbor had reportedly heard Smith screaming, "Leave me alone! Please! I didn't mean to!" Believing there to be some kind of domestic disturbance occurring at Smith's property, a wellness check was made by police officers. A statement was taken, and Smith explained that he had woken in the dead of night to see something standing over him. On October 2nd, only a few days later, another unusual incident was reported from South Palm Beach County Courthouse. During the working day, employees at the courthouse witnessed Frank Smith rushing out of the staff bathroom with his work pants around his ankles. He was noted as being in hysterics and yelling incoherently about not being able to go in peace and that someone wouldn't leave him alone. Shortly after the incident, Frank Smith received an official reprimand for indecency. 2 days later, Frank Smith was found alone in a courtroom half an hour before a case that he was overseeing. He seemed to be speaking to someone or something he perceived to be sitting in the judge's seat, presiding over the empty courtroom. Smith prostrated himself before the vacant seat and appeared to be begging for forgiveness. Upon his discovery by colleagues at the courthouse, Smith fled the premises. No one saw him again, until a traffic collision later that day. While driving, Frank Smith had abruptly stopped his car at an intersection, right in the path of another oncoming vehicle. The resulting collision claimed his life. The reasons for his erratic behavior and that of Wilma Greggs, Craig Dillard, and William Greggs has all since been attributed to the same anomalous occurrence. Each of them had encountered SCP-5842. The SCP Foundation has documented all known sightings of SCP-5842 and have determined that they have been isolated to a single area, 66 miles north of Miami, Florida, within West Palm Beach, Palm Beach County. SCP-5842 is only known to have appeared in the village of Wellington, Florida, and the Foundation has already implemented a cover story that these were the result of a practical joke, as a way to avoid any suspicion arising among local residents. However, the area remains under Foundation surveillance in case additional sightings are made. SCP-5842 appears to be a standard North American stop sign, having an octagonal-shaped face, red with a white border and white lettering. Nothing visually distinguishes it from other non-anomalous traffic signs. However, its primary anomalous property has been ascertained from various incident reports. The object appears to be able to disappear and reappear in locations via unknown means. Initially, researchers at the SCP Foundation believed the appearances of SCP-5842 to be random. It was noted that the anomalous stop sign bore some resemblance to another anomaly. So, an investigation was launched to determine whether or not there was a connection between them. SCP-1047, also known among research staff as the vengefully ironic street signs, are a collection of traffic signs that each possess anomalous properties that correlate to the specific orders given by each one. Among them are SCP-1047-1, a one-way sign that has been observed to reorient the force of gravity in the direction of the arrow on the sign. SCP-1047-3 is a no parking sign that causes any living being within its radius to be in constant motion and unable to stop. An anomalous merge sign, SCP-1047-4, forces all vertebrate creatures nearby to spontaneously bond together, forming one composite being. Another instance, SCP-1047-5, is a sign urging to yield, in its case making anyone near it to become subservient to anyone that offers them a direct command. And SCP-1047-6 is a speed limit sign with a denomination of 55 miles per hour. This causes the speed of light in the surrounding area to be reduced to this specified speed of 55 miles per hour. There does exist, within the collection of vengefully ironic street signs, another anomalous stop sign referred to as SCP-1047-2. When exposed to this sign, any living vertebrate will suffer an instantaneous and irreversible state of total bodily paralysis. SCP Foundation anomalous research teams were initially convinced that SCP-5842 was some as-yet unseen variation of the numerous instances of SCP-1047. However, its anomalous functions seem to be considerably different to that of SCP-1047-2 and almost closer to that of SCP-1047-5, the anomalous yield sign. Based on the various eyewitness accounts of SCP-5842, this anomalous stop sign could compel them to stop and reconsider their actions. In the case of Wilma Greggs and Craig Dillard, encountering SCP-5842 affected their behavior to such a degree that they acted largely out of character, abandoning their jobs after witnessing the anomalous stop sign. According to the text message logs recovered from Wilma Gregg's phone by the Foundation, the anomalous influence of SCP-5842 was potent enough to compel her to act against her usual behavior. This included walking 5 hours to her home from the office rather than taking her car, deliberately avoiding roads, and sticking to public sidewalks and footpaths. Heading to the village of Wellington, Florida, Foundation research teams attempted to gather more information about SCP-5842. Conducting covert interviews with local residents didn't provide much in the way of results. However, one researcher Quadraginta, seemed to quickly determine a possible reason as to why. Up to this point, the Foundation had been treating sightings of SCP-5842 as if it were another instance of SCP-1047, not as a potentially entirely separate anomaly that might have its own mode of operation. In short, it was an altogether different type of anomalous road sign. Adjusting their approach, the SCP Foundation accessed historical road maps of the local area from multiple years and cross-referenced the placement of stop signs. The goal was to determine whether SCP-5842 had manifested in the past or been documented in any official road surveys conducted in Wellington. This began a laborious process of inspecting each stop sign location within the village against the locations on road maps of the area. Researchers found that almost all the signs on their maps corresponded to a real sign, each at its exact location listed, except for one. A single stop sign was found missing from its designated location, a discrepancy that stood out, as it was consistently recorded on Wellington's road maps. Even the oldest available maps of the area, dating back to the earliest records of modern roads, indicated its presence. This suggested that the sign had existed for as long as the local road network itself. The site of the missing sign itself appeared to have sustained damage during some kind of accident, so the Foundation queried this with local traffic police. They were able to confirm that an incident had occurred on September 27, 2019. The sign had been damaged and removed as a result, pending a replacement. The Wellington Police Department also reported another unusual incident 1 week later. A local courtroom clerk inexplicably stopped his car in the middle of an intersection, directly in the path of oncoming traffic. Despite there being no stop sign present at the location, That proved to be the crucial missing piece of the puzzle. Taking another look at the eyewitness reports of SCP-5842, researcher Quadragenta was able to make sense of it all. There had been no appearances of an anomalous stop sign prior to the incident mentioned by the Wellington Police Department. The road maps of the village confirmed that. Now that they knew what had happened in Wellington just before SCP-5842 started appearing, Quadragenta realized that the sightings hadn't been random at all. They'd been connected. Having determined exactly what was going on, researcher Quadragenta and the rest of the Foundation team concurred there was little they could do. After implementing the cover story, they somberly departed from Wellington, leaving the anomaly uncontained. The last known sighting of SCP-5842 occurred sometime after October 4, 2019. It was witnessed by a groundskeeper at the South Florida National Cemetery, who saw the anomalous stop sign leaning over a tombstone. Before disappearing, it had seemed to be severely dented and damaged. Since vanishing, there have been no subsequent sightings of SCP-5842. The tombstone where the stop sign was last seen bore a simple inscription. It read, Thomas Greggs, October 4, 1990 to September 27, 2019. Loving husband and father.
It's a quiet morning in Lego City, until the robbery begins. Clients of Lego City's First National Lego Bank barely notice at first as men in dark suits with plastic black masks covering their faces slink into the room from every conceivable entrance and exit. When these same 10 sinister Lego strangers all pull out guns, everyone pays close attention. "This is a robbery," their leader says while firing his gun into the air. "We don't want any heroes. If you try to disrupt our operation, we'll blow you into bricks." The patrons hit the ground, cowering for dear life, as 5 of the masked robbers approach the tellers with open bags, and the other 5 work crowd control, pointing their weapons at the cowering civilians. These men are hardened Lego criminals. If something goes south, they won't hesitate to start blasting. "Empty your vaults, lady," the leader says to one of the tellers. "We ain't messing around. We'll ice everyone in here." But the teller doesn't follow his orders. Instead, she reaches under her desk and presses a tiny red button hidden from sight. Suddenly, the room erupts in red flashes and alarms as the bank security system activates. Robbers and hostages alike feel themselves beginning to panic, but the leader, he stays cool and still. Less than 10 seconds pass before the alarm stops. You could hear a pin drop in the room. Locks deactivate and shutters roll back up. The teller is confused and horrified. What happened? Little does she know, in a van parked outside, an 11th member of the Lego robbery team is working on a sophisticated computer setup. He's hacked into the bank security system, and he's been able to both shut down the alarm system and intercept the message that goes out to the local police precinct. The plan is unfolding perfectly. "Nice try," the leader says, and shoots the Lego teller dead. Everyone in the room, including the other Lego robbers, gasp. Nobody is prepared for things to get this ugly this quickly. "Anyone feel like helping me out here?" the leader says. "Or am I going to need to start wasting more tellers?" The surviving tellers read the message loud and clear. They open up the vaults and begin wheeling out stacks of Lego cash, which the robbers begin stuffing into containers and duffel bags. In total, they steal over 2 million Lego dollars. Each member of the team is going to get a hefty payout. With the mission completed, there's no sense in hanging around. They need to hop into their Lego getaway cars and be out of there before the Lego cops show up. But by the time they're leaving the bank, it's already too late. Lego cop cars are tearing down the street towards their parked getaway vehicles. It doesn't make sense. Their operation was perfectly planned, military in its precision. The whole thing had been over in less than 3 minutes. How are the cops on them already? But none of them have time to think. The cop cars screech to a halt, and armed officers start climbing out, training their guns on the gobsmacked team of Lego robbers standing in front of the bank.
"Freeze! Put down the weapons in the bags, or we'll be forced to take action!"
A Lego cop screams over a Lego megaphone. The only reply they get is gunfire. The leader levels his Lego gun and starts blasting, taking out 2 cops and forcing the rest to scramble for cover behind their vehicles. Taking advantage of the moment of opportunity, the robbers scatter like cockroaches under a newly lifted rock. Most make it to their cars, but in the confusion, the Lego police are able to return fire. One of the robbers, the tallest but slowest of the hardened criminal team, goes down in a hail of bullets. Another one of the robbers, who'd been his friend, screams in rage and turns his gun on the police, firing like a madman, not even caring if he hits his target. A conveniently placed police sniper in the building across from them wings him with an expert shoulder shot that drops him to the ground, alive but too injured to escape. He's nothing but dead weight now. The remaining 8 robbers pile into 3 Lego getaway vehicles, 2 classic cars manned by getaway drivers, and the van where the team's elite Lego hacker had been doing his high-tech work. Now, their job is a lot more simple. Get out of here without getting caught or killed. Immediately, the chase spills out onto the streets. They'd planned for this possibility. After completing the job, they'd each head to 3 different pre-designated safe zones, so if one was followed, they wouldn't implicate the others. The plan is complicated by seemingly having every single one of the city's cops on their tail now. Contact between the 3 vehicles immediately breaks down. The leader of the robbers is in the fastest of the getaway cars, with 3 others, the driver, the rookie, and the old-timer. Behind them, scores of Lego police cars surge through the streets. Armed officers hang out of the passenger doors, opening fire on their escape vehicle, hoping to hit them or at least pop the tires. "We want to play rough, huh?" the leader says to his panicking fellow criminals. "We'll show them how to play rough." The leader and the old-timer grab a pair of Lego submachine guns that are lying across the floor of the car. They lock and load before leaning out of the car windows to return fire. If they're going to go down today, it's going to be in a blaze of glory, not bruised and humiliated in a holding cell. "You'll never take us alive, coppers!" the old-timer barks as he and the leader open fire on their pursuers. It's a parabolic hellstorm, skittering bullets across the hoods of the police cars behind them. The windshields of even Lego police cars are reinforced to take this kind of punishment, but not for long. Soon enough, the surge of cars is buckling under the weight of fire from the leader and the old-timer. Cars are crashing into each other and piling up as the criminals take off. What should have been a simple robbery is quickly spiraling into a nightmare for all involved. The death toll is already in the double digits, and the chase goes on, with frequent gunfire exchanged between the Lego robbers and their Lego boys in blue pursuers. Above all this, above the chase, above the gunfire, above the robbery, 2 almost godlike giants stare down on the whole chaotic display. These godlike giants are, in fact, a pair of young boys, aged 8 and 9. Less than an hour ago, these boys were just bored kids who'd run out of games to play on their Xbox. They had decided to go a little retro and switch up the Minecraft for a classic box of Lego. One of the 2 young boys remarked, "I think my dad has a big red box of Lego in his office. He probably won't mind if we use it." Of course, what the boy didn't know was that his father wasn't, contrary to his own belief, an accountant who worked in the city. He was actually a mid-level researcher working with the SCP Foundation, and quite the workaholic at that. He had a tendency to bring his work home with him, metaphorically, and in the case of some safe-class SCPs, when given the proper clearances, literally. One such SCP was SCP-387, the Living Lego, a toy that genuinely has a mind of its own. While completely inert and seemingly normal inside their red box, when removed and even partially constructed, the Lego comes to life and begins playing out its roles, from planes to tanks to hospitals to war zones. And these Lego creations are extremely committed to their parts. After finding the box, the young boys did what all children do when they happen upon a box full of Lego. They started building. And thanks to their vast juvenile imaginations, it didn't take long for them to construct an impressive Lego city in the living room. But a standard city full of Lego running smoothly is no fun. The boys needed to introduce a little extra excitement to the proceedings, like, say, a team of bank robbers. The one thing the 2 young boys don't expect is for the bank robbers, when introduced to the city, to start independently planning and executing a heist on the city's biggest bank. Still, there are worse ways to kill a rainy Sunday. Back on the ground of the Lego City, the other getaway vehicles are running into trouble. The other car had initially managed to pull ahead from the police, but while trying to cross a bridge, it runs into an unexpected roadblock. Literally, the Lego police have built a roadblock on the other side of the bridge, and now it's too late to reverse.
"Open fire!"
An enraged Lego police captain yells to his assembled squadron behind the barricades, and they raise the guns, and do so. Lego bullets pepper the getaway car. They can't drive through the barricade. All they can do is make a sharp left turn and hope to avoid the onslaught. Instead, they smash through the Lego barricade and tumble off the bridge. The car sails into the freezing Lego River, where the sudden cold paralyzes the robbers and the getaway driver inside. They go into shock and drown moments later. Across the Lego City, the van containing the hacker, the getaway driver, and another robber had somehow blended in with the traffic and has managed to escape the relentless police chase.
Everyone inside the van breathes a sigh of relief, knowing they've already done better than most of their fellow criminals tonight. If they manage to make it through, there will be much to celebrate. For them, the next stage of the mission is clear. They need to make their way to a warehouse in the industrial district, their designated drop-off area, where they could hide their stolen money and disappear like leaves in the wind. They've already been through the hard parts, the planning, the robbery itself, the shootout, and car chase with the police. They're out of the woods now. Or so they thought. When they arrive at the warehouse and drive inside, parking their van, they immediately realize that something is off. But by now, it's too late to do anything about it. They suddenly hear footsteps and the screech of tires as heavy police tactical vehicles squeal into the warehouse all around them, boxing them in. Lego SWAT team operatives climb out of each vehicle and train their weapons on the trapped van. One of them yells,
"We have you surrounded! There's no way out! Drop your weapons and surrender if you want to walk out of here alive!"
And so, with no other options, this is exactly what they do. When they exit the vehicle with their hands behind their heads, the Lego SWAT team tackles them and claps cuffs around their wrists. They'll likely be spending the rest of their lives in jail for this fiasco, but at least they get to live. Across the city, only 4 members of the robbery team remain alive and free. The leader, the old-timer, the rookie, and the remaining getaway driver, all of whom narrowly managed to escape the extensive police detail following them. It had been a mix of skill and blind luck. The leader knows that one thing about this whole situation has nothing to do with luck. With all the planning they'd been doing and the disabling of the bank's security system, how had the police been on them so fast? There's only one logical answer. They'd been set up. One member of the team was secretly working with the Lego City police, and they'd sold the rest of them down the river. The leader doesn't know who specifically ruined this entire operation like that, but he intends to find out, and when he does, he's going to make them pay dearly for their betrayal. But for now, he stays quiet. He doesn't want to show all his cards before they made their way to the safe house, if it was even safe anymore. Still, they'll deal with that problem when they get to it. After a tense 10 minutes of silent driving, they reach the planned rendezvous point, another warehouse in the city docks, built against the section of blue carpet that the young boys who made this world intended to represent the ocean. Here, they'd wait for a speedboat chartered by their employers to pick them up and their ill-gotten gains. If they survive that long. The getaway driver parks the car out of view in the abandoned oceanside warehouse, and the criminals inside pile out, breathing carefully and stretching their little Lego legs. There's tension in the air, and of course, it's the leader who breaks the silence.
"Someone here hasn't been entirely honest with us,"
he says, taking out his Lego handgun.
"There's no way the cops could get on us that quickly if they hadn't been given some kind of tip."
Another grim silence falls over the room. The old-timer, the rookie, and the getaway driver share a suspicious glance. Who among them could be the imposter? The daring escape they'd managed to perform no longer gives them comfort. The millions of dollars in the trunk of their little Lego car may still be forfeit if one of the people in this warehouse is a police informant. The silence is once again broken by the leader, who raises his weapon and shoots the getaway driver dead. The rookie and the old-timer are horrified by the seemingly callous and random display of violence.
"What's wrong with you?"
The old-timer barks. The rookie chimes in with,
"What made you think he was the mole?"
The leader just laughs, his weapon still raised, its barrel drifting back and forth between the old-timer and the rookie. His indifference to violence frightens them. He seems unpredictable and dangerous.
"No reason," the leader says. "He'd already done his job. We don't need a getaway driver anymore. And getting rid of him narrows down my options. Which one of you squealed on us?"
The rookie pulls out his own gun and aims it at the leader. The old-timer follows suit, not wanting to be left out. They now have a full-on Mexican standoff on their hands. Only the leader seems unfazed. The rookie says, "If what you say about there being a squealer is true, how'd you know it'd be one of us, not someone from the other teams?" The leader shrugs.
"I can't know for sure, but I'm not going to take any chances."
He levels the gun at the rookie and prepares to fire, when suddenly a nearby window shatters. It's the police. Their little internal dispute would have to wait if they wanted to keep a single Lego cent of the money they'd stolen. Heavily armed Lego police officers bust open the door with a battering ram, while others climb through the windows. It's another classic ambush. The leader and the old-timer turn their guns towards the invading Lego cops and start firing wildly, shooting some and scaring away others as they run towards the car. They can't escape here without the money. If they don't bring the money, then all this chaos was for nothing. The leader runs across the warehouse, narrowly dodging the hail of Lego bullets firing all around him, and skids to a stop behind the getaway car. Even with gunshots ringing out from every direction, the leader keeps his cool and reaches into the car. He manages to find the largest duffel bag and slings it over his shoulder. Even if he doesn't get all of the money, he can run away with most of it when that chartered speedboat arrives. Nobody involved in this even notices when the roof lifts entirely off of the warehouse. The two huge young boys stare in from above, curious about where the story is heading down below. They're here just in time to see the tense shootout continue as the desperate leader pops out from his cover and returns fire against the advancing line of police. The old-timer tries his best to hold his own, holding a gun in each hand and firing wildly, but his recklessness soon catches up with him. Outnumbered, the cops with Lego shotguns and assault rifles unload on him, leaving him every bit as dead as the getaway driver. Ducking away to avoid the same fate, the leader notices something. The rookie is nowhere to be seen. Not dead, just gone. He knew it. Of course the rookie had been the mole all along. He should never have trusted the little creep. It had been a perfect plan, and he'd ruined everything. Over the din of gunfire, the leader hears something else. A boat motor. It's the chartered speedboat, his ticket out of this nightmare of bullets and broken promises. He might win after all. He turns and sees the speedboat entering the submerged part of the warehouse, just out of view of the police strike force. It would be a risky move, but he knows he can make it. He doesn't have any choice. Throwing caution to the wind, the leader turns and runs towards the boat, dodging every bullet that the police fire at him. He's doing it. He's doing it. He jumps into the boat, and the boat takes off, speeding away from the warehouse. He laughs in crazed relief, still lugging the duffel bag full of money off his aching shoulder. He's out. He's home free. Until a giant hand from above descends and grabs his Lego boat. He's lifted up and thrown back into the red box he was originally taken from, while the two young boys start taking apart the rest of the Lego city and tidying it back into the box too. "My dad'll be home soon," one of the young boys says. "We better clean up before he's back." The crowbar, bearing a bloody handprint, clatters to the soft earth below. Not long ago, this same crowbar had been striking against the side of an unassuming house, but it would not get the chance to unleash another blow. The two vandals, wielding a spray can and a hammer, respectively, stare on in horror at the terrible fate befalling their friend. The third vandal, who had been holding the crowbar until moments ago, is seizing and spasming, his feet suspended a foot above the ground. A large, organic tendril is impaling him through the chest, rendering him a human shish kebab, his shirt soaking through with blood. The tendril is emerging like some organic appendage from the outer wall of a nearby home, the ultimate security system. But the horror isn't over. As though in a nightmare, they find themselves frozen to the floor. But it isn't just fear. They look down and see that roots are growing up through their shoes, up through their feet. They are quite literally rooted to the floor. But this is nothing compared to what's happening to their skewered friend. He is rotting, decomposing at impossible speeds. The tendril impaling the decomposing vandal recedes into the wall, taking the vandal with it, absorbing him. As the vandal is absorbed, the cracks he'd made in the wall with his crowbar seem to repair themselves like a healing wound. His matter, perhaps even his very soul, has become one with the village that he had once aimed to desecrate. The vandals had never expected the village to fight back. With the former crowbar wielder dispatched, the village turns its attention to the other two vandals. The one holding the spray paint can is the first one to go. The ground puckers around his feet, the roots gripping tight and dragging him into the earth like quicksand. He screams for his friend to help him, but the dirt soon chokes out his words. Even if the only surviving vandal wasn't also rooted to the floor, there was nothing he could have done to save his rapidly sinking friend. As the spray can vandal is consumed by the earth, the vandal with the hammer feels a surge of adrenaline coursing through his vital systems. With tremendous force, ignoring the terrible pain it causes him, he yanks his feet away from the roots, some roots being pulled from the earth, others yanked out of his feet. His shoes filling with blood, he turns and runs towards the edge of the village. Even though he's lost his friends, if he gets out, he can tell people, he can stop all this. But he doesn't count on the houses around him developing another modification. Strange, organic sphincters that spit out small bone-like darts at high speeds, sticking into the vandal's back. Some unknowable chemical leaches from the darts into the vandal's muscles, paralyzing him. He collapses to the ground, foaming at the mouth, as another long tendril reaches out, grabs him by his wounded feet, and drags him back to the village. There's a price that needs to be paid. Since its discovery, the SCP Foundation has assigned the designation of SCP-1135 to an anomaly located in an unnamed village in India. Any name historically associated with the isolated village, as well as its exact location, have been stricken from all public records and redacted even within the Foundation's own database. All previous residents living within the area prior to its acquisition by the Foundation have since been expelled from the area, relocated, and rehomed, as well as provided with sufficient doses of amnestics to prevent knowledge about SCP-1135 reaching the public. The area surrounding SCP-1135 is noted as having a few irregularities for a village in this particular region of India. The houses of the village are built around a Hindu temple, as well as local places of commerce. However, researchers have noted the usual structure of the buildings as being inconsistent with other Indian architecture. For one, the roads leading into and through the village, and for 2 kilometers around it, are fully paved with asphalt concrete. In addition, the houses are much larger than those found elsewhere in the region, and show signs of being constructed using far more technologically advanced methods and materials than are seen even in neighboring townships. Each building in the vicinity of SCP-1135 is furnished with running hot and cold water, working electricity, and sewerage, all of which are considered uncommon in the area. Though the Foundation has conducted extensive research in and around the village, personnel have been unable to determine exactly how the electricity is able to reach these buildings. There is no functional infrastructure, as is seen in places that are provided power via electrical grids, nor is there any form of rudimentary system in the area generating electricity. Researchers have been unable to locate any form of generator that could be powering the village's homes, and it has been surmised that they instead receive electricity as a direct result of SCP-1135's anomalous properties. After conducting further investigations into the structure of the buildings in the area, Foundation personnel have discovered that the materials used in construction are not only unique to the village, but are also seemingly organic in nature. Each structure in the area affected by SCP-1135 is made from what appear to be strands of organic fiber that run through each and every building. In fact, and of the permanent fixtures within the village, excluding anything brought in and placed by the Foundation, consists of these same fibers. These strands never affect nor threaten the structural integrity of any of the buildings and extend into the ground for about 3 meters down, like the roots of a plant. Extensive spectral analysis and excavation of selected areas surrounding SCP-1135 have unearthed that these organic fibers are connected, forming a network underneath the village itself. They're able to grow and perform self-repair at an impressive rate, as well as absorbing nutrients from the soil, again functioning as the roots of many flowers and trees would. You see, SCP-1135 isn't a village. It's just something that looks like it. Something alive. SCP-1135 is one big living organism. This has led to those working among the research team to colloquially refer to the anomaly as the Living Village. Researchers have noted that SCP-1135 shares similarities with certain strains of fungi, albeit much larger and seeming to not require the same low-light conditions that many fungi thrive in. The fibers that SCP-1135 consists of have been seen during testing, generating a wide variety of organic and non-organic materials around themselves. This, according to Foundation researchers, has been what has allowed the fibers to form the structures found within the village, as almost a form of active camouflage. A research assistant working on site even likened it to the defense mechanisms of certain insects, such as stick bugs or Caligo urolacus, commonly known as the owl butterfly, for the distinctive markings on its wings that resemble the face of an owl in order to ward off predators. However, one anomalous entomology expert assigned to SCP-1135 took particular offense to this observation, expressing incredulity at the notion that a creature would disguise itself as a village in order to hide itself. This was already known to have drawn human beings into the area, as SCP-1135 had even been an active community prior to the village being acquired by the Foundation. The entomologist, in a fit of rage, hurled obscenities at the research assistant and forbade him from ever speaking again. The fibers that SCP-1135 consists of are known to be able to repair themselves, and can thus repair the structures found within the village. Periodically, new instances of these organically grown buildings will start to emerge from the soil, maintaining their structural integrity at all times during this process. Thanks to the use of hydrochloric acid to prevent expansion of the affected area, SCP-1135 remains confined within the perimeter established by the SCP Foundation. As what seems to be a direct result, when space is limited, older structures within the village will appear to collapse and disintegrate before making way for new ones to grow in their place. When this occurs, the fibers within these older structures atrophy as the building, for lack of a better term, dies. In order to survive, like all living organisms, SCP-1135 requires some form of sustenance. Initially, the research team stationed there assumed that this was done entirely by the fibers absorbing water and nutrients from the soil. However, this alone is not a substantive enough food source to allow SCP-1135 to continue living. The anomaly's main source of sustenance wasn't initially discovered until an incident involving the aforementioned research assistant and anomalous entomology expert. Clearly still highly offended by the research assistant's statement about SCP-1135's camouflage, the entomologist took a jeep down one of the asphalt roads leading out of and away from the village. Unbeknownst to the rest of the research team, the entomologist followed the road to its end, arriving at some isolated scrublands, an area that stays dry and hot during the summer months, but avoids becoming a desert in the winter thanks to cooler, wetter weather. While alone in the area, the anomalous entomology expert overheard a sound, almost like a sizzling noise. Identifying it quickly, he recognized it as the warning sound produced by a certain variety of snake as a warning to ward off threats. He investigated further and encountered a wild echis, known locally as the saw-scaled viper or the carpet viper. Aware that these were venomous and responsible for causing the most snakebite-related deaths in the world, the entomologist was able to capture and secure the wild snake, an action he would later describe as being not very well thought out. Returning to the living village, it had already gotten dark by the time the entomologist arrived back at the Foundation's field headquarters with the saw-scaled viper in tow. The rest of the research team had retired to their quarters for the evening and were all asleep. Under the cover of darkness, the entomologist released the captured saw-scaled viper into the research assistant's bunk as the man slept, as retribution for his earlier statement. Surely enough, the saw-scaled viper bit the sleeping research assistant and injected him with a lethal dose of its venom, killing him. In a panic, the severity of his actions setting in, the entomologist hurriedly dragged the assistant's body to the outskirts of the village and hid it in one of the buildings. The next morning, it didn't take long for the remainder of the researchers to notice their assistant was missing. While nobody suspected foul play, a sweep of the area was conducted and the research assistant's body was discovered, or rather, what was left of it was. Seemingly overnight, the body had decomposed at an extremely accelerated rate, almost withered beyond all recognition, as if it had been drained. The deterioration of the body, strangely, had produced no noticeable odor, as the breakdown of gases involved in human decomposition usually do, leading a portion of the research team to examine the remains closer. Through doing so, they discovered how SCP-1135 feeds. The fibers from the building the research assistant's body had been left in had latched onto the corpse and were using the dead tissue, cells, and other organic matter as a source of sustenance. It turned out that in addition to pulling water and nutrients from the soil, any biological waste left in the boundaries of the village became a food source for the living village itself. This applied to any variety of waste present in the area. It was because of this, one researcher realized, that nobody had seen any animal carcasses or excrement anywhere within the village. SCP-1135 had been absorbing and eating it, as it was now doing to the research assistant's body. Upon hearing not only that the dead research assistant had been found, but that his remains were being decomposed and consumed by SCP-1135, the entomologist vomited, waste that was also absorbed by the living village, and later confessed to the murder. He was placed on probation and given a 2-year ban from fieldwork, including expeditions to anomalous areas. Initially concerned that they would be next on the organism's menu, the surviving remainder of the research team investigated SCP-1135's consumption process further. Testing themselves for any potential deficiencies or unnoticed losses of tissue, they found no sign that the organism had been secretly using them as food too. It seemed to only affect dead organic tissue, or anything that was no longer serving a biological use to anyone within the living village. All the waste matter in the area was decomposed quickly, with no telling signs like smells, and typically left little trace afterwards. Researchers concluded that the organism later converted this waste into nutrients for itself through some unknown anomalous process. What they were unable to determine was how SCP-1135 was able to differentiate between waste matter and other, still living matter. The first suggestion to the research team that the living village wasn't quite so similar to an organism like a plant as first thought, but could potentially possess some form of sentience or even intelligence. It was then noted that certain structures within the boundaries of the village that began to disintegrate usually did so if SCP-1135 had gone a significant amount of time without feeding. It was able to use the buildings constructed from its own fibers as an alternative food source. Inversely, as was seen after the living village ate what was left of the research assistant, consuming a larger amount of waste triggered the growth of new buildings, or the evolution of improvements in existing ones. Noticing the rapid growths of new buildings post-feeding, members of the research team proposed a series of invasive tests to the affected area of SCP-1135. They'd seen the living village deconstruct its own mass for use as food, and wanted to determine how the anomalous organism would react when the fibrous structures were damaged by external factors. Based on the way the fibers had behaved so far, it seemed to be a logical assumption that any damage inflicted to buildings within the living village would just regenerate. However, the way in which the organism responded to the research team's experiments was far from being so predictable. Inflicting minor damage to any of the living village's structures was, as had been anticipated, soon corrected by the fibers. However, repeated or substantial enough damage caused the anomalous organism to create new constructs with its fibers, in the form of elaborate traps that it used to injure, drive away, or in extreme cases, kill its attackers. Multiple members of the research team examining SCP-1135's defensive responses suddenly found themselves tumbling into pitfalls that seemed to form right under their feet in seconds. Others weren't so lucky. During an experiment that involved striking at one of the SCP-1135's buildings with a sledgehammer, the researcher wielding said implement was witnessed suddenly stopping mid-swing of the hammer. Upon closer inspection, it appeared his heart had been pierced by a number of spiked caltrops that had burst out of the wall and impaled his body as he struck at the organic fibrous building. Attempts were made to treat his injuries, however, the trauma to his major arteries was too severe. Before the rest of the research team could begin to start making preparations for a burial, SCP-1135 had already started its process of decomposing and consuming his body, identifying it as more waste to be broken down for nutrients. Thanks to an autopsy conducted by researchers on site, the caltrops and other deadly contraptions made by SCP-1135 to deter attackers were determined to be far more complex than any other naturally evolved defense mechanism. Far from possessing poison to kill predators or camouflage to hide from them, more and more of the research team began to suspect that SCP-1135 possessed some form of intelligence. The traps it could make were the kind that would take a human with a high degree of intelligence and skill to make. Further examination determined that if they remained untampered with, traps produced by the organic fibers of SCP-1135 would disintegrate within a time frame of between 20 and 30 days, unless being triggered. Unless damaged repeatedly or substantially enough, however, SCP-1135 displayed no active hostility towards human life. On one occasion, during preparations for confining SCP-1135 to the area within the security fence, a measure of diluted hydrochloric acid was accidentally spilled on one of the structures, causing a temporary panic among researchers that the living village would retaliate with more traps. However, again signaling a degree of intelligence, the organism seemed to be capable of differentiating between damage that was caused indirectly and intentionally, as well as damage inflicted by living organisms or by other natural forces. While all of the findings of the research team have heavily suggested that SCP-1135 possesses a degree of human-like intelligence, this remains unproven. Discovery of SCP-1135 had taken place some undisclosed date prior to the Foundation's arrival in the area. A reporter who had been investigating aid efforts in the region of India where SCP-1135 is situated overheard rumors from local residents that described a place where buildings had seemed to grow overnight. Various interviews with eyewitnesses pointed the reporter to the living village, wherein a small population had gathered and were now living. Before information about SCP-1135 was able to be made public, operatives working for the Foundation intervened and were able to keep the village's discovery a classified secret. When conducting their intervention at SCP-1135, the Foundation's operatives conducted interviews with local residents who reported that the village had possessed anomalous properties for only a few years. The reporter, who had been detained for further questioning by the Foundation, had been following a story relating to a sustainable housing development scheme that had been conducted in the area. According to the information unearthed by the reporter, this scheme had been responsible for the creation of SCP-1135 and had been conducted by an organization known as the Mana Charitable Foundation. However, as far as the SCP Foundation were able to ascertain, there existed no such charitable organization, and any attempt to identify people involved in the scheme were unsuccessful. Unbeknownst to the SCP Foundation, the Mana Charitable Foundation was far from a fictitious organization. Although their existence has been kept from the Foundation through cognito-hazardous means, the truth is that the Mana Charitable Foundation is a non-profit and non-government organization that intends to use anomalies in order to provide humanitarian aid and emergency relief to various underdeveloped areas around the world. As the largest international paranormal charity in existence, Mana Charitable Foundation has been responsible for the creation of numerous useful SCPs that have been contained by the Foundation, SCP-1135 being among them. One strange occurrence was recorded some time after the Foundation acquired control of the area. This took place during one of the routine observational checks carried out by research teams. A number of the Living Village's buildings had grown what appeared to be security cameras on their outer walls, and in certain indoor areas as well. These cameras have been observed watching the waste disposal teams as they move through the village to deposit SCP-1135's food. Beyond tracking their movements, the cameras have done little to disturb Foundation personnel inside SCP-1135. Requests to dismantle and examine the internal workings of these cameras are currently pending approval from Site-43's administrator, Dr. Regal. Every 3 days, a research team assigned to SCP-1135 will perform a series of checks of the area within the security fence. All research personnel on site are reassured that they are not to take any precautions that would otherwise be necessary for entering a hostile environment. Researchers are dissuaded from carrying weapons on their person while checking the area within the security fence. However, they are required to be in possession of a two-way radio communicator at all times. Additionally, each member of Foundation staff is advised to maintain constant visual contact with another fellow researcher, just in case the Living Village feels like having a late-night snack. An empty bottle shatters against the ground, sending shards of glass across the tarmac. The teens, fueled by adrenaline and cheap booze, are having a wild night, and it's just getting started. After getting booted from the local arcade for causing a scene and grabbing some greasy budget burritos from a local Mexican takeout joint, their journey led them here, the local park. For the two high school seniors, the playground equipment was the perfect canvas for their artistic vision. They laughed as they planned the graffiti and lewd sketches that would cover the slides and monkey bars by dawn. But before any of that can happen, a wave of childhood nostalgia washes over them. Why not go on some of the rides, for old time's sake? It's not like anybody would ever know what they did here tonight. And they're right, in the worst way possible. Little do they know, something extremely dangerous is lurking. Something that wants to cause them terrible, terrible harm, in a way that, even after it happens, they'll never truly understand. By morning, as the first rays of sunlight glint off the dew-soaked grass, it becomes clear. The teens never made it home. Their panicked parents call the police and register their concern. This isn't like them. They never stay out this long. The search begins. Calls go out to local radio shows and TV stations. Concerned citizens staple missing posters to telephone poles. By evening, the streets and nearby woods are filled with volunteers, walking in lines, clutching flashlights, calling out names into the approaching darkness. The police bring in the usual suspects. Locals with a criminal history that indicate they might be a danger to local teenagers, but it doesn't turn up any meaningful evidence. Meanwhile, halfway across town, a cleaner employed by the local council sweeps up the glass from the broken whiskey bottle at the playground. As the mother watches the cleaner dump the broken glass into a garbage bag, her little boy is playing on the jungle gym with his friends. The mother's hand snakes towards her pocket, then stops. She fights the urge to reach for the pack of smokes, worrying what the other mothers will think of her if she does. It's been a stressful month, the latest of many. She doesn't have time to worry about anything else. Hell, she hasn't even heard about the missing teens. "Mommy, look how high I can climb!" She forces a smile as she watches her boy reach the top of the ropes. That smile almost becomes genuine when she sees how happy her son looks. And then her phone starts to ring. It's him. Again. Her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, if he'll ever actually accept the divorce papers. She sighs and walks away from the playground for a moment. She doesn't want their son to hear them having another long-distance shouting match. When the humiliation ritual is over, she returns to the playground. Only something's wrong. She notices it immediately. Her son isn't there. She feels the panic pierce her chest in that instant, but tries to keep her composure. She asks one of the other mothers what happened, and they seem just as confused as her. "I think he just went down the slide," one of them says. "I wasn't looking, I'm sorry," says the other. The fear is impossible to suppress now. The mother screams her child's name, but there's no response. She climbs up the wooden structure and looks down the shaft of the metal tube slide. It's empty. Her voice echoes down as she calls the name again and again. Her horrified screaming just pours out the other side. Soon enough, one mother's panic infects the entire town. 3 missing people in 12 hours? 2 teens, 1 child? Could there be a kidnapper on the loose? It doesn't take the papers long to start running with it. Police search every inch of the playground, the fields beyond it, and even the nearby forest, but they don't find anything. The mother gives her statement to the police, and soon after, her estranged husband is also brought in for questioning. It soon goes from local news to national syndication. Extra police are soon sent in from external departments to widen the search, as phones within tens of miles of the incident give the frightening buzz of Amber Alerts. The first 24-hour window is the most important, but as the hours draw on, the hopes start to dwindle, and the local police precinct is starting to catch flack for their ineptitude. One person who isn't getting that same blowback is the mother. Soon enough, she's America's favorite terrified mother. Her email inbox is full of tabloid newspapers and online outlets begging for exclusives. They want to know how she's feeling right now. Does she have any theories as to what happened? Is there anything she'd like to say to the man who presumably has her son locked up in some basement compound? The mother is part of every search party, every night. She tromps through the undergrowth, shouting her son's name. But soon, the tone of the search starts to change. Police and search parties stop walking through forests and knocking on doors. Instead, they start trawling riverbeds and digging through gravel pits. Nobody says it, but the subtext is clear. They're not looking for a little boy anymore. They're looking for his body. Little by little, even the most ardent supporters start to peel away. It's not exciting anymore. It's grim and depressing. But even that isn't nearly as awful as what's about to happen. Slowly, at first, and then with all the speed and intensity of an avalanche, the media and then the public begins to turn on her. The headlines go from being kind and sympathetic to indifferent description of just how long the fruitless search has gone on, to active cruelty. Doesn't the mother seem like she's taking all of this too well? Doesn't she seem a little suspicious? The headlines are the lit match thrown into the tinderbox. The conspiracy theories start flying online. Internet sleuths intent on getting to the bottom of this, to finding a more believable angle. They unpack the details of the case in the most unfavorable light imaginable. Did she smile during that press conference? There must be some kind of ulterior motive here. There must be some secret underneath the surface. And as you'll find out later, there is. Just not the one anyone here would expect. The mother is still getting hundreds and sometimes thousands of messages every day, but the tone of these messages has changed with the media's depiction. "I know what you did, you monster. You can't keep getting away with this. How can you live with yourself, killing your own little boy? Did you dig a big hole for him, lady? I'm gonna dig a bigger one for you." But the messages aren't nearly as chilling as the maniacs who show up at her house. It starts with shadows, figures moving through the bushes at night, barely visible in the glow of the porch light. Then come the sounds, the dull thud of rocks against the siding, the occasional crash of something heavier smashing against a window. In one instance, Someone even shot at the facade. When the police came over to investigate, she sensed an undertone of, "Everything always happens to you, doesn't it?" underneath the sympathetic smiles. Her car has been ruined by horrific graffiti multiple times. The tires slashed, the windows cracked, the doors keyed. Every single way that a person can suffer an indignity, short of physical violence, she seems to be suffering it. She even sees YouTubers and podcasters hiding in their cars, filming her as she takes out the garbage for B-roll in their documentaries about her perceived wrongdoings. She cries too much. She doesn't cry enough. Don't her eyes look like a murderer's eyes? But she'll even take all the pain that comes with being awake over the horrors that invade her dreams. Well, it's only ever one dream, actually. She's there on the day that her boy went missing, standing with the other moms at the edge of the playground, watching her little boy. Except in the dream, nobody has a face. They're all blank and smooth, with voices that sound like muffled nonsense. Her son calls out to her, and then, at the exact same time that it did in real life, her phone starts to ring. It's her husband again, her soon-to-be ex-husband. As though trapped by the certainty of the past, she steps away and answers the phone, moving liquid slow. Her husband's voice comes through the microphone next to her ear in an eerie monotone. "Why aren't you watching our boy?" She turns and sees him gone. Not just him, but everyone, as though she's completely alone in the world. She dashes over in a panic, though to her, that dash is in torturous slow motion. The words of the other mom ring with haunting clarity in her ears. "I think he just went down the slide." In a blur of panic, she scrambles into the slide, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Her hands slip on the smooth plastic, her knees banging against the sides as she crawls forward. But this time, she doesn't see the faint light of the other side, just an all-consuming darkness yawning before her, pulling her in like a void. She doesn't stop to think. That's when she hears it. "Mommy!" His voice. It's faint, but unmistakable. She needs to keep going, but inside, the slide feels like a desperate and terrible infinity. Endless loops in cold, dark metal. Every time she feels like she's getting close to seeing her son again, he gets just a little further away. Then, everything slips out of reach. She bolts upright in bed, gasping for air, her nightshirt clinging to her sweat-soaked skin. The slide. She knows she has to go back. It's not just a dream. It's something more. A pull she can't explain. The slide. She has to go back to the slide. And that's what she does. That night, she goes back to the playground, still cordoned off with police tape fluttering in the breeze. She ducks under the cordon, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. She stands at the base of the slide, staring up at its hollow, gaping entrance. Her breath catches as she takes the first step, her fingers curling tightly around the metal rungs. They feel cold in the damp night air. She pauses at the top, and then summoning every ounce of courage, she throws herself forward, face first, her arms pinned tightly at her sides. The world blurs as she hurtles downward, the slide pulling her in faster than it ever should. And then, she's somewhere else. The throat of a deep cave, in complete darkness. The walls and ceiling close in tightly around her, the hard rock pressing against her body. She can't move, can't even wriggle her arms loose. She screams into the void, but the sound feels swallowed, crushed by the suffocating darkness. There's no echo, no sense of space beyond the tiny prison she's trapped in. She now knows what happened to her son. She just can't save him. Or herself. To someone claustrophobic, what I just described is probably worse than an eternity in hell. But that's simply par for the course when it comes to SCP-1562, also known as the Carnivorous Slide. An anomaly where the questions it raises are every bit as unsettling as the few answers we have regarding its nature. To the untrained eye, there's nothing amiss about this particular anomaly. It's a metal tube slide, 11 feet long, 3.4 meters, and 7 feet high, 2.2 meters. part of an otherwise completely non-anomalous playground in a location that, for your own safety, will remain undisclosed. There's a good chance that even if you use the slide, you may not fall victim to its anomalous effects. That's because these effects are only activated when someone uses the slide in a very particular way, namely, sliding down it on their stomach, face first, with their arms at their sides. When this condition is satisfied, the victim will disappear at some point during the slide, vanishing without a trace. To this day, despite the Foundation's best attempts to capture the phenomenon, it has never been directly observed. I cannot stress enough that this is very much a one-way trip, too. Nobody who has gone down the slide and disappeared has ever been recovered. Even when the Foundation has sent D-Class personnel down the slide with a tether attached to their bodies, the tether has been mysteriously cut when the person disappeared. All of this begs the unsettling question, where are all these people going? The best that the Foundation can estimate on this is that it's an extra-dimensional space, which has largely been described as an extremely cramped, cave-like environment where light ceases to work and mobility is extremely limited. Due to the position that victims are in when the anomalous effect takes place, they're rarely even able to move their arms. While here, beyond even experiencing the natural fear one would logically feel in this situation, they feel the sudden onset of panic and paranoia as their situation deteriorates. There have only ever been 2 Foundation experiments conducted on SCP-1562 before testing was suspended indefinitely. In the first, a member of D-Class personnel was tethered and sent down the slide, at which point he promptly disappeared, severing the tether. However, the long-range communication device left with the D-Class still worked. From his new location, he was able to describe not only the dark and cramped locale, but something wedged in the tunnel in front of him. He described a tiny shoe, like that of a child, laying in the tunnel in front of him. He also heard a voice talking and telling him to stop crying, even though he wasn't. When asked to describe his situation, he said,
I'm still headfirst on my stomach and my body's at an angle, but I'm in some sort of small tunnel and I'm stuck. I'm completely surrounded by rock or dirt on all sides. I don't have enough room to raise my head or move my arms, and I can't move forward. I really want to get out of here now.
Of course, there was no way for the Foundation researchers to get him out. Instead, they asked him about the other person who seemed to be trapped in there with him. The D-Class said,
He just kept asking where he was, and I told him I didn't know. But I don't think he was really talking to me because he didn't respond to my voice, and he told me to stop crying when I was actually sort of calm.
They then asked him whether the other person seemed to be moving.
I don't think so. He started crying and asking for his mommy, then he finally stopped, and shortly after that, you contacted me again. Please get me out now. Please hurry, my chest is...
Communication cut at this point, much to the distress of everyone involved. In response to this incident, another test was approved, this time using a member of D-Class personnel who has a smaller stature. The logic being that a thinner man might be more mobile in the enclosed space of SCP-1562's anomalous area, allowing for further exploration than the previous test subject. However, despite the difference in size, this D-Class seemed just as trapped and enclosed as the first. He reported the same disappearance of all light, the same shortness of breath, the same dirt and rock, the same tiny shoe just in front of his head. But then he started hearing a voice, one very familiar to the Foundation researchers, echoing from the dark. It was the voice of the previous D-Class. And it wasn't just his voice. He was saying everything that he'd said during the previous test at exactly the timings that he'd said it, as though someone was playing back a recording. Soon after, the voice stopped. The second D-Class's transmission was cut not long after, his last recorded words being, "Oh, thank God for that. I was starting to think that..." He was never heard from again. In light of this development, the lead researcher in the case, Dr. Carver, suspended all testing. To do any more would simply repeat the same result and sacrifice more lives to the Carnivorous slide. These days, the slide is quarantined in Testing Lab 46-V in Site 24, kept away from the public and from dangerously curious Foundation researchers who might repeat certain old mistakes. When you've done this job for long enough, you realize that sometimes not having an answer at all is kinder than knowing the awful truth beneath it all. The sun was shining brightly, casting a warm glow over the backyard. Balloons tied to chairs and fences swayed gently in the breeze. Laughter rang out, mingling with the gleeful barks of a golden retriever chasing after a ball. Children darted across the lawn, their high-pitched squeals of delight filling the air as the dog bounded after them. Nearby, parents gathered around a table draped with a checkered cloth, sipping on cool drinks and chatting, their conversations punctuated by affectionate glances toward their playful kids. Everything seemed perfect. Almost too perfect. But there was something off, something you couldn't quite put your finger on. Near the edge of the yard, the bushes shifted ever so slightly. The movement was subtle, barely enough to register, yet there was something deliberate about it. If anyone had been watching closely, they might have seen it. A flash of something obscured by leaves. Something hidden. Watching. One of the children, a boy no older than 8, wandered closer to the bushes, chasing after a stray ball. He stopped just short of the greenery, peering into its shadows. A sudden stillness came over him. His body froze, arms limp at his sides, and his eyes wide with panic. The golden retriever barked in the distance, the sound barely covering a peculiar noise, a rhythmic, fleshy pounding, like something soft being repeatedly struck. And then, as abruptly as it had started, it stopped.
The cake! Go get it!
A voice called out from the sliding glass door, sharp and impatient. A woman held the door open with one hand, her other hand resting on her hip. She glanced toward the gathering in the garden, then back inside, clearly annoyed that no one was listening. Outside, a man sighed, putting his drink down on a chair. He left the lively sounds of the party behind as he stepped into the house. The watcher in the bushes shifted their focus, following the man's movement. The house had a small window, low to the ground, partially open. Beyond it, the faint outline of stairs were just visible. The watcher's gaze locked onto the window, then slowly, it began to move towards it. Inside the house, the man walked down a quiet hallway toward a door. Small footsteps padded behind him, and he turned to see a tiny figure following him. A toddler, no more than 3 years old. She was holding a stuffed animal close to her chest, her little feet struggling to keep up. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice soft and curious. Her father smiled down at her. He stopped in front of the basement door and crouched so they were eye to eye. "Stay here, okay? I'll be right back." The toddler hugged her toy, her big eyes staring at the door. She didn't move, but her curiosity was clear. The man opened the door, and a faint creak echoed through the hallway. The basement stairs were steep, disappearing into the shadows below. He stepped inside, the stairs groaning under his weight as he descended. The door swung closed behind him, but didn't fully latch. The toddler stood still, staring at the gap. Outside, the figure in the bushes crept closer to the small, open window. The basement was dim and cool. An old refrigerator emitted a faint hum in the far corner. The man's footsteps creaked against the worn wooden stairs. Overhead, the weak glow of a single bulb barely illuminated the room. The man paused near the bottom step, letting his eyes adjust to the gloom. Then, he heard it. It wasn't loud, just a soft shuffle in the darkness, but it was enough to draw his attention to the far end of the basement. His gaze locked onto a figure just beyond the reach of the light. He cocked his head, squinting. "I don't remember you being down here," he said, his voice tinged with confusion. He took a cautious step forward, his head tilting slightly as if trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The figure remained still, silent. He hesitated, shifting his weight forward, when something dropped from the figure's shadowy form, a small, glistening object that bounced once on the floor before rolling to a stop against the man's shoe. He glanced down. It was a piece of candy, brightly colored and oddly inviting. He let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "What is this, some kind of weird prank?" he muttered. Amused, he bent down, picked up the candy, and popped it into his mouth. The sweetness hit his tongue immediately, but there was an odd, metallic tang underneath it. A few moments passed. His grin faded. Something felt strange. His body jerked violently as a sudden spasm racked his chest. He stumbled backward, clutching at his stomach. His legs gave way, and he fell hard onto the cold, concrete floor, convulsing uncontrollably. The figure in the shadows didn't move. Its unblinking gaze was fixed on the man as he writhed. From above, a tiny voice called out, "Daddy?" The man's eyes widened further, filled with panic. He tried to respond, but no sound escaped his lips. He strained, every muscle in his body desperate to speak, to warn her. "Daddy?" the voice repeated, softer this time. Closer. At the top of the stairs, the little girl peered into the dim basement. She couldn't see much, just the outline of her father at the bottom. She hesitated, her tiny fingers gripping the banister. Then she heard a strange scuffling sound, like something heavy dragging across the floor, followed by a low grunt. It was almost drowned out by the sharp sound of something wet hitting the ground. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice quivering slightly. The little girl stepped carefully onto the first stair, then the second. Her stuffed animal hung limply from her hand as she descended, one tiny step at a time. When she reached the bottom of the stairs, the little girl paused. The dim light of the basement bulb flickered weakly, casting long, uneven shadows across the cold, concrete floor. Her father lay crumpled in a fetal position, his body unnaturally still. She tilted down her head, her wide eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and confusion as she peered at him. "Daddy?" she whispered softly. She took a step closer. That's when she saw the dark red streaks running down his torso and legs. They glistened faintly in the weak light, and for a moment, she thought it was water. But as she stepped closer, the streaks looked thicker, darker. Her small, patent leather shoes made a soft, scuffing sound against the floor as she inched forward. She froze when she heard it. Drip. She looked down. Drip. A heavy, wet sound broke the silence again, and her gaze followed the noise. At her feet, something bright and colorful caught her eye. It rolled lazily across the floor before coming to a stop near her shoe. She crouched down, her tiny hands brushing the cold concrete as she picked it up. It was a piece of candy, round and shiny, its surface slick with something that wasn't syrup. She held it up to the light, her curiosity overriding the faint sense of unease creeping into her chest. She turned her gaze back to her father, her small brows furrowing as she took another step forward. The dark streaks on his legs glistened again, and she realized they weren't water at all. They were the source of the candy. Drip. Another piece rolled free, landing with a faint thud near her foot. Her eyes widened with curiosity as she bent down to pick up a piece. Without hesitation, she popped it into her mouth, chewing thoughtfully, before her face lit up with delight. The little girl looked past her father and saw it, the thing in the basement. It was crouched low, watching her. Its form was impossible to make out entirely, a blur of shifting textures and colors that didn't seem to belong in the dim light. The little girl's eyes lit up again, a wide smile spreading across her face. "Oh!" she gasped, her tiny voice full of delight. She dropped her stuffed animal and started to run toward it. She didn't make it far. Her small body froze mid-step, just like her father's. Her arms snapped in front of her with a crack, her little legs locked in place. Her wide, joyful eyes were now filled with shock and confusion. Moments later, her hair began to fall out in clumps, drifting softly to the floor like leaves in the wind. Then, her skin changed. Patches of what looked like pink papier-mâché sprouted across her body, twisting and curling, as if forming a grotesque, living sculpture. The thing in the basement shifted slightly, its attention fully on her now. The sound of something wet and heavy hitting the floor echoed again, the only noise breaking the suffocating silence. Outside, the laughter and chatter of the garden party continued, but a persistent whine broke through the noise. "I want my cake!" The birthday boy tugged at his mother's arm, his face scrunched up in frustration. She sighed, clearly trying to keep her composure. "Your father and sister are getting it from the basement," she said, brushing crumbs off her hands. The boy frowned, crossing his arms. He turned to his friends, a small group of kids around his age who had gathered nearby. "Come on," he said, determination in his voice. "Let's go get it ourselves." The group exchanged glances before nodding. The dog, ever eager to follow the commotion, bounded after them as they marched toward the house. Inside, the basement door still hung slightly ajar. The birthday boy led the group through the hallway, his fists balled up as he pushed the door open. The stairs creaked ominously under the weight of the children as they lined up along the steps, peering into the dim basement below. "Dad?" the boy called out, his voice wavering slightly. At the bottom of the stairs, they could see him, curled up on the floor, back turned. The little girl was nowhere in sight.
"Where's your sister?"
one of the boys whispered. The birthday boy shrugged. He stepped down, the others following close behind. As they reached the base of the stairs, the birthday boy's eyes landed on something scattered across the floor. Candy. Bright, colorful pieces mixed in with something darker. The dog wasted no time, darting forward to sniff at the candy before gobbling it up eagerly. The boys hesitated only for a moment, their curiosity overriding their unease.
"Candy,"
one of them whispered, bending down to grab a piece.
"Sweet,"
another said as he popped one into his mouth, chewing quickly. One by one, the boys followed suit, each grabbing handfuls of candy from the floor and eating them without a second thought. The birthday boy hesitated, glancing back at his father, but then his resolve crumbled. He grabbed a piece and tasted it, the sugary sweetness almost masking the metallic tang of blood. He edged closer to his father, his steps tentative, but as he angled himself to see his father's face, he froze. His mouth fell open, his small chest heaving as tears welled up in his eyes. His father's torso had been ripped open. A massive, jagged gash ran down his body, and where his organs should have been, candy spilled out instead. The bright, sugary pieces glistened wetly in the dim light.
"Something's wrong with your dog, dude,"
one of the boys said behind him. The golden retriever was lying on its side, convulsing violently. Its limbs jerked unnaturally, foam bubbling at its mouth before it fell still. But the boy didn't respond. His tear-streaked face stayed locked on his father. One of the other kids had wandered toward the corner of the basement.
"Hey, look at this,"
he said, pointing. The others turned to see what he was looking at, a pink pinata, oddly shaped and sitting in the shadows.
"That's cute,"
one of the boys said, grinning. The first boy moved closer, curious.
"How'd this get here?"
he wondered aloud. As he stepped toward it, the pinata shifted. At first, it seemed like it was just settling, but then it moved again, this time stepping toward him. The boy giggled nervously.
"Guys, it moved."
He reached out a hand as if to touch it. Then, just like the man and the little girl before him, he froze. His arms snapped in front of him with a sharp, unnatural crack. The others laughed, assuming he was playing a game. But their laughter faded as his hair began to fall, drifting to the floor in soft tufts. Then the pink papier-mâché started appearing, spreading over his skin like it was alive. His face contorted, but his body stayed stiff, locked in place.
"What's he doing?"
one of the boys whispered, laced with fear and confusion. A scream erupted, sharp and terrified, as the group finally realized something was wrong. More screams followed, echoing through the basement and rising into the house above. In the garden, the parents paused mid-conversation, their laughter faltering. The sound of the boys' screams pierced the air for only a moment before it suddenly went silent.
"Kids,"
one of the parents said, chuckling nervously. "They're just playing." But another frowned, glancing toward the house. What if they weren't just playing? A small group of parents exchanged uneasy looks before heading inside to investigate. The parents descended the basement steps cautiously. At the bottom, the scene that greeted them stopped them cold. The father's lifeless body with candy scattered across the blood-stained floor, the dog lay twitching in the throes of a violent seizure. But what should have been a group of kids was something far worse. Pink pinatas filled the room, standing upright like small, grotesque soldiers. They varied in size and shape, their surfaces warped and patched with jagged papier-mâché. Slowly, all of them turned in unison, their dark, hollow eyes locking onto the parents at the stairs.
"What the?"
one of the parents muttered, his voice trailing off. The pinatas began to move. At first, it was a slow, jerky shuffle, but as they drew closer, their movements grew more coordinated. almost human-like.
Run!
Someone yelled, breaking the trance. The parents frantically turned, trying to flee up the stairs. The piñatas stepped over the father's lifeless body, their hollow eyes unblinking, as they climbed the stairs toward the rest of the house. Inside the home, the piñatas moved with an eerie sense of purpose. Their jerky mechanical steps carried them through the rooms. They reached the sliding glass door leading to the backyard, a small army of unsettling pink figures, hollow eyes glinting in the sunlight. The garden buzzed with laughter and conversation, the clinking of glasses mixing with the delighted squeals of children playing tag. Drinks were being refilled, and parents chatted in small groups, glancing occasionally at their kids. Near the back of the garden, a few adults who had just fled the basement stood huddled together, their faces pale and eyes wide with panic.
You don't understand,
one of them stammered, their voice low but urgent.
There's something down there. It's...
Before they could finish, the sliding glass door to the house slid open. Heads turned as piñatas began to emerge, their stiff, unnatural movements drawing the attention of everyone in the garden. The children's eyes lit up, and they pointed excitedly.
Piñatas!
One of them exclaimed, their voice filled with glee. The adults exchanged confused glances. What were those things? The group from the basement froze, their breath catching in their throats. As the piñatas moved closer, a boy broke away from the group, his curiosity overriding the unease shared by the adults.
Cool,
he said, running toward one of the strange pink figures.
No, stop!
A parent called out, but it was too late. The boy froze mid-step, his body locking in place as if an invisible force had taken hold. His arms dangled at his sides, and his wide eyes darted frantically. The nearest piñata shuffled closer, its hollow gaze fixed on him. Without hesitation, it raised its paper fists and began to strike. The blows were brutal, reverberating with sickening thumps. Candy spilled from the boy's torso, colorful and gleaming in the sunlight, as the piñata continued to hammer him until his lifeless form crumpled to the ground. For a moment, the garden was silent. The adults stared, paralyzed by shock, their faces pale with horror. Then, the silence shattered. The adults screamed in terror, their voices blending into a cacophony of panic, but the young children screamed with delight, their glee cutting through the chaos.
Candy!
One of them yelled, running toward the pile.
Wait, don't do it!
A parent cried, lunging to stop them, but it was too late. The children swarmed the candy, grabbing handfuls and stuffing it into their mouths. Their giggles rang out as they chewed, oblivious to the blood staining the ground. The changes began almost instantly. One child froze mid-bite, their body trembling, as their hair began to fall in clumps. Another dropped to their knees, their skin splitting and sprouting pink papier-mâché. Within minutes, the children who had eaten the candy were no longer human. Their forms twisted grotesquely as they morphed into new piñatas, their movements identical to the originals. The remaining parents fought desperately to pull their children away from the candy and the advancing piñatas, but the piñatas kept coming, unrelenting, their hollow eyes fixed on the chaos they were creating. One of the fathers, standing near the barbecue, acted on pure adrenaline. He ripped the grill off its stand, flames still licking at the edges. With a guttural yell, he hurled it into the center of the advancing piñatas. The flames exploded outward, engulfing several of the creatures in an instant. Their jerky movements ceased as they crumbled to the ground, reduced to ash and smoldering scraps of paper.
The fire!
He shouted, his voice desperate.
Use the fire!
But his victory was short-lived. One of the piñatas appeared behind him, unnoticed in the chaos. He froze mid-turn, the tongs he was clutching clattering to the ground. The piñata wasted no time, striking him with brutal precision until his body spilled candy across the ground. Across the street, a nosy neighbor watched the chaos unfold from her living room window. She clutched the phone tightly, her voice shaking as she spoke to the emergency dispatcher.
There's something happening at the house across the street. I don't know how to explain it. These things, they're attacking everyone.
Her young daughter stood beside her, pressing her face to the glass.
What are they, Mommy?
She asked, her voice small and scared. The mother didn't answer. Her heart sank as she realized the piñatas had stopped their rampage in the garden. Every single one of them had turned to face her house.
Mommy,
The little girl whispered, tears forming in her eyes.
they can see us.
The piñatas began to trot towards their house. These were no ordinary party favors. Following the suburban tragedy, the SCP Foundation has identified these anomalous entities responsible as SCP-956. SCP-956 resembles a typical piñata, often taking the form of an unidentified quadruped. While its outer appearance mimics papier-mâché, analysis has revealed its composition includes glue, sugar, an unidentified type of fur, and human tissue. SCP-956 is notably resistant to bludgeoning damage, withstanding significant crushing force without harm. However, it is vulnerable to gunfire, heat, and flames, which have proven effective against it. SCP-956 remains passive under normal conditions, displaying no mobility, intelligence, or aggression. It activates when a human under 12 years old enters a 5-meter radius. Within 7 to 28 seconds of entering this range, the child becomes immobilized, frozen in their current stance. While unable to move or speak, their rapid eye movement suggests they remain fully aware. SCP-956 approaches the victim and bludgeons them until the torso ruptures, releasing a large pile of unmarked candy, designated SCP-956-1. The number of candies ranges from 23 to 1,323 pieces. SCP-956 repeats this process for all other immobilized victims before returning to its passive state. A victim can be removed from SCP-956's activation range if retrieved quickly. Once the victim is moved at least 12 meters away, SCP-956 reverts to its passive state. However, the victim remains permanently immobilized, showing no signs of recovery. Autopsies on immobilized victims reveal severe dehydration, causing their bodies to become brittle. Additionally, SCP-956-1 candy begins to grow from the victim's internal organs, integrating with the tissue. The amount of SCP-956-1 produced directly correlates with the duration the victim spent within SCP-956's activation radius. The effects of SCP-956-1 differ based on the consumer's age. Humans aged 12 or older experience seizures within 3 minutes of consumption, with a 5% risk of cardiac arrest. The survival rate for affected individuals is approximately 35%. Animals, regardless of age, exhibit similar effects after consuming SCP-956-1. Children under 12 experience a distinct reaction to SCP-956-1. Upon consumption, they enter a state similar to the immobilization caused by SCP-956, standing upright with their arms resting in front of them. The transformation occurs in 3 stages: rapid hair loss, the emergence of papier-mâché from their skin, and a full restructuring of their bones and muscles. This process takes approximately 9 minutes, culminating in the victim's complete transformation into a new instance of SCP-956. These new instances exhibit identical behavior to the original SCP-956. The process is invariably fatal, with a 0% survival rate. Though initially classified as safe, SCP-956 has since been reclassified as Euclid due to its autonomous behavior and significant threat to human life, particularly children. Emily huddled in the corner of the bathroom stall. Her lunch lay untouched on her lap as she nervously reviewed her exam material. Outside the walls of the stall, classmates chatted about makeup and crushes. The bell rang and the schoolgirls poured out of the bathroom. Emily took a deep breath and stepped out of the stall. She washed her hands, all the while avoiding looking down at them. She knew her fingertips were a mess, raw and slightly bleeding. She stared straight ahead at the mirror, muttering reassurances to herself. "You can do this. You're going to pass this exam." The hallways were silent and deserted as Emily stopped at her classroom door. She looked through the window at the neat rows of desks. Sat behind each one was a student, exuding calmness, ready for the exam. It was so different from her own frazzled appearance. Her breath shook and her hand trembled as she pushed the door open, its creak echoing in the quiet hallway. As she entered the classroom, some students looked up and snickered, but Emily was focused. She needed to find her seat and pass this test. The classroom seemed to blur around her as she focused on the exam paper in front of her. Her anxiety hit a peak and her fingers automatically moved to her mouth. as Emily attacked her exam questions and her fingertips with equal ferocity. Whispers turned to gasps, then to screams.
"She's a monster!"
one student cried out. Emily, deeply absorbed, kept writing, unaware of the chaos brewing around her. Confronted with the final question of the exam, Emily bit down on her fingernail until a loud crunch filled the room. A few students fainted. One vomited. The rest were in too much shock to react. When the teacher came over to help, Emily, still lost in her exam, accidentally shoved her away. Blood was sent splattering across the floor and onto her paper. Emily's eyes moved from her stunned teacher to her own hands, her expression turning to horror. Still, her mind urged her on. Wipe the blood away, keep writing. She continued until paramedics arrived and pulled her from her desk. In the plain, clinical office of the psychiatrist, Emily sat with her injured finger tightly wrapped in gauze. Blood still seeped through, staining it red. The psychiatrist, a woman with a calm yet assertive manner, started to discuss everything that led to her being committed to this facility. Unaware, Emily began nibbling on her other hand.
"Do you know what a coping mechanism is?"
the psychiatrist asked in a gentle but firm tone. Emily, her eyes misting with tears, shook her head slightly, while her hand moved instinctively to her mouth.
"It's something you do to reduce stress or discomfort," the psychiatrist explained, observing Emily closely. "But if it hurts you, it's considered maladaptive, like your nail biting."
Emily stopped biting and clenched her hand into a fist in her lap, fighting the urge.
"Do you remember the first time you started biting your nails?"
the psychiatrist asked. Emily nodded, her mind drifting back to a dark memory she wished she could forget.
"It was years ago,"
she whispered, her voice barely audible.
"I was just a little girl."
She described the night it all started, her father drunk and aggressive, her mother coming home late to spark a violent argument. Sent to her room, Emily listened as the noise grew, yelling, something breaking, a loud thud. Curiosity drew her out, only to find her mother on the floor, her father standing over her, anger coursing through every sinew. That's when Emily started crying uncontrollably until she bit her tongue. The pain cut through her sobs.
"That was when I learned that pain,"
Emily said, looking into the psychiatrist's eyes.
"Pain could silence the fear, the anxiety. It made everything quiet."
The psychiatrist wrote this down, her face reflecting deep consideration.
"You've carried this way of coping into your adolescence," she noted. "Now we need to find healthier ways for you to manage your feelings."
Emily watched the psychiatrist, her feelings a tangle of fear and hope. As her fingers slowly moved back toward her mouth, the psychiatrist handed her a small, bright ball.
"Let's keep your hands busy," she suggested.
Emily took the ball and squeezed it, shifting her focus to the pressure in her grasp rather than the pain. Later that day, in the recreation room, Emily couldn't help but feel like she'd accidentally stumbled into a preschool class, not a psychiatric facility. There she was, notably the eldest, towering over kids like a giant. Their little hands were fitted with bandages, a telltale sign that they all shared a fondness for compulsive habits. It should have made her fit right in. It didn't. Emily gripped the stress ball as she took a seat in one of the small chairs. She thought about playing checkers with the boy seated beside her, but decided against it. Instead, she started peeling away the gauze from her finger. The room went quiet. The children watched, their expressions a mix of curiosity and awe. The little boy next to her fidgeted, uneasy.
"We're not supposed to do that,"
he murmured, his voice filled with a mix of fear and fascination. Emily gave a half smile, her face showing a blend of sadness and defiance.
"Sometimes the rules are too hard to keep,"
she whispered, tossing him the stress ball. As Emily pulled off the final layer of bandages, revealing the raw, sensitive skin underneath, a noticeable shift occurred among the watching children. They looked at their own wrapped hands, and then back at Emily. Emily's small act of defiance seemed to linger heavily in the room. Within moments, all the children began unwrapping their bandages and feasting on their nails and fingertips. Recognizing Emily's potential to influence the other children, the staff decided to place her in solitary confinement.
The room was stark, equipped only with a chair and a camera to record every moment under close surveillance. The psychiatrist glared at Emily, while the nurses tightly secured her limbs to the chair with leather straps to prevent self-harm. "You started a feeding frenzy," the psychiatrist sternly said, watching Emily's reaction closely. "You can't bite your nails in front of the kids." With that, she turned on her heel and slammed the door shut, leaving Emily alone. Only the closed-circuit television kept her company, the prying eyes beyond watching her, staring at her. Confined, Emily's anxiety soared to new heights. Every single movement caused the restraints to strain and dig into her skin, stark reminder of her confinement. Overwhelmed by a growing desperation, she gnawed at the leather straps with unexpected ferocity. Her teeth had become surprisingly sharp, her desperation transforming them into something wild and untamed. Maybe she was a monster. Would that be such a bad thing? Monsters are strong. Monsters aren't broken or afraid. Monsters are survivors. Once free of her shackles, Emily quickly removed the remaining gauze from her hands. Beneath the wraps, her fingers had undergone a shocking change. They were no longer topped with human nails, but had morphed into sharp, black, chitinous points. A wild giggle escaped her as she looked over her new claws. A wave of power washed over her, wiping away any remnants of the fragile, subdued girl she had once been. Turning to face the camera that had been watching her every move, her eyes glinted with a fierce, unsettling joy. She lunged at the lens, attacking it with her new claws. The camera vibrated violently as her last look, a chilling, victorious smirk, fizzed into static before the screen abruptly went black. She had become SCP-8480-A. SCP-8480, classified with a containment class of Keter, a disruption class of Eki, and a risk class of Critical, refers to an anomalous mental disorder affecting children aged 3 to 14, known as SCP-8480-1 instances. These children exhibit a range of symptoms from moderate to severe anxiety, headaches or migraines, intensive nail biting, onychophagia, skin-eating dermatophagia, unusually rapid healing, and a high tolerance for pain in their digits. The disorder typically activates under conditions of extreme, persistent anxiety or traumatic experiences, particularly if the child uses nail biting as a coping mechanism during such times. Following infection, the progression of symptoms in SCP-8480-1 instances varies depending on internal and external stress factors. A significant number of cases may persist into adulthood without clear symptoms. Currently, a substantial number of infected children, recorded in the thousands, are under the care of the Foundation, having been committed before reaching the age of 15. A notable subject, SCP-8480-A, or Emily Curtis, age 20, was significantly older than typical instances at the time of discovery. Stage 1 of SCP-8480 can initiate any time before adolescence, typically affecting children around the age of 9, although cases as young as 3 months have been noted. Diagnosing infants is challenging as they lack teeth. Early signs often exude sucking on fingers or gumming their limbs. Regardless of age, SCP-8480-1 instances exhibit initial symptoms within 2 to 3 days of the triggering event. During this stage, instances commonly experience low to moderate anxiety throughout most days. They may also suffer from mild physical discomforts, such as stomach aches or headaches, which are frequently dismissed as common childhood complaints. Moreover, these children develop various maladaptive coping strategies, including skin picking, hair pulling, and notably, nail biting, which they often describe as providing the most relief. A troubling psychological symptom is the onset of a deep-seated belief among the affected children that there is something fundamentally wrong with them, which cannot be corrected. It remains unclear whether this belief is a direct symptom of SCP-8480 or a psychological side effect of the disorder. Without intervention, children typically progress to Stage 2 within 6 months to a year from the appearance of the first symptoms. Stage 2, referred to as stasis, marks a deepening of the initial symptoms observed in SCP-8480-1 instances. In this stage, the afflicted children become heavily dependent on their maladaptive coping mechanisms to manage their emotional states. Despite attempts through medical, psychological, or therapeutic interventions, these behaviors persist unabated and intensify. During Stage 2, instances notably increase their reliance on nail biting and skin eating, which are used consistently to regulate their emotions. This escalation in behavior frequently results in physical injury, with instances often experiencing bleeding due to the severity of their actions. SCP-8480-1 instances are capable of remaining in this stage indefinitely. Notably, SCP-8480-A is the oldest recorded instance who had remained in Stage 2 until just before being admitted into Foundation care. Progression to Stage 3 occurs only after an SCP-8480-1 instance endures a significant and prolonged period of stress, anxiety, and traumatic experiences. The specific circumstances that catalyze this transition vary from individual to individual, making it challenging to predict exactly what will trigger the advancement to Stage 3. Stage 3, termed Complete Infection, marks a critical phase for SCP-8480-1 instances, where mitigation of symptoms and reduction of self-inflicted injuries become the primary focus, as further recovery is not feasible. In this stage, all previous symptoms escalate from moderate to severe, accompanied by several distinct and severe anomalous effects. The skin and muscles in the fingers and hands of affected individuals soften significantly, making them more susceptible to damage. Biting their fingers, nail beds, or hands triggers the production of nerve blockers and endorphins in the brain. This adaptation reduces pain and provides a brief sensation of pleasure, complicating the cessation of these behaviors. The hardening of the teeth enables instances to bite through not just flesh, but also bone, intensifying the severity of their condition. Anomalous cellular regeneration is heightened, leading to rapid tissue repair and forcing a cyclical pattern of self-consumption to manage emotional distress. Instances develop a compulsive need to consume the flesh and nails around their fingers, driven by their accelerated healing rates. Affected subjects experience a profound psychological impact, feeling fundamentally broken and no longer identifying as human. This manifests in a loss of interest in normal human activities, including eating anything other than their own body. Current research efforts are directed towards finding potential cures or methods to neutralize SCP-8480. However, no effective treatment has been discovered yet. Instances in Stage 3 will persist in this state until their biological functions cease, underscoring the dire nature of this advanced stage of SCP-8480. Stage 4, known as Reclamation, represents a profound transformation in SCP-8480-1 instances, believed to occur after a period of deep self-reflection and acceptance of the traumas that triggered their condition. This stage is only reached when an instance stops the constant self-consumption of their fingernails and surrounding tissues. The symptoms characteristic of Stage 4 include complete cessation of pain, although it remains unclear whether this lack of sensation is due to physiological changes or psychological factors. A significant reduction in anxiety levels, which drop to minor or negligible. The nature of this reduction, whether anomalous or not, is yet to be determined. While compulsive behaviors like nail biting and skin eating cease, subjects continue to exhibit other maladaptive coping mechanisms and signs of psychological distress. The development of black chitinous growths in place of fingernails, which are capable of cutting through metal, stone, and organic materials, marking a significant physical anomaly. Enhanced physical capabilities, including increased strength, endurance, and metabolism, which contribute to a heightened state of existence. Marked increase in hostility towards Foundation staff, coupled with a refusal to remain in containment, posing significant challenges to management and security. Due to these complexities and the substantial threat posed to normalcy, containment protocols for SCP-8480-1 instances in Stage 4 have been entirely revised. All previous treatment approaches have been suspended indefinitely, reflecting a shift in strategy in response to the unique challenges presented by this advanced stage. All SCP-8480-1 instances are mandated to be isolated and contained at Site 80-P, ostensibly under extended psychiatric care. Bandages, gauze, splints, and casts are provided only upon the instance's request. A critical part of the containment strategy involves placing any potential SCP-8480-1 instance in a controlled, traumatic scenario post-identification, without the awareness of the subject or their guardians. Should symptoms escalate after the induced trauma, the individual is immediately transferred to Foundation custody. Strictly, Foundation staff are prohibited from offering counseling, support, or any mental health treatments to SCP-8480-1 instances. Furthermore, these instances are not discouraged from engaging in maladaptive auto-cannibalism, as this behavior has shown to deter the progression to Stage 4. Consequently, SCP-8480-1 instances require minimal sustenance, only needing food and water once a month, and are kept in solitary confinement continuously. SCP-8480-A, identified for aggressive immediate measures, is to be neutralized upon detection, with remains to be sent back to Site 80-P for detailed analysis and further study. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob that will make you question whether your nail biting is just a bad habit or an anomaly in the making. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single anomaly as we delve further and further into the SCP Foundation's classified archives.